expansion announcement dropped. We've got bears, housing, Wing 8. Sneb isn't here, and that actually is sad for me, because I would be able to torment him about how he promised, and I'm just... Someone get the screenshot. Someone drop this here. Okay. Sneb said he will cover himself in Vaseline and pretend to be a slug if Wing 8 releases. So he has to do that.
Did you see that Grouch like tweeted about that? I was
Yeah.
like, wow.
I mean, I think that was probably a big part of their motivation for releasing Wing 8 is that they saw that quote, and we're gonna have to do Wing 8 now. We're gonna have to make this happen there. So it's gonna be good stuff. And also we've got Spears as well. We have a wondrous array of guests. Okay, up bright and early today actually as well. Very funny. Emmy is fresh, ready to go, ready to destroy this tea time. Got Lara,
I woke
got
up
Nike
at
and
7
me.
a.m.
Yeah.
Literally woke up at 7 a.m. for this.
Yeah,
I don't even wake up
exactly.
this early for work.
Wow.
Yeah. That's how important it is. That's the
Dedication.
value. Yeah, I guess I want to open up the discussion here. I kind of want to talk about the feature set a little bit. Of course, we're seeing an iteration over Secrets of the Obscure with our wonderful JANTHIR WILDS expansion. How are we thinking about the feature set in comparison to what we saw with Soto, and just the feature set in general? You know, let's talk hashtag MMORPG. Let's open a discussion. Let's go.
Well, it's definitely maybe not more. You know, who knows what the polish is going to be on any of it, but on paper, it's a way stronger feature set than Soto. I think that like there's, even if the raid is like the lamest raid ever, it's still higher effort than 2 strikes. So there's that.
Yeah, I think my sense on it is that Soto had a lot of new player features, right? So it's like kind of a standalone story. A lot of like they mentioned strike missions being very approachable for new players, and also they streamlined a lot of the old processes, right, with like sky scale and all. But I feel like at least on paper, all of the stuff that they've announced for this next expansion, it feels a lot more tailored towards veteran players, right? So a lot of long-term replayability with things like homesteads, new weapons, which I feel like other than flavor might have pretty crazy like meta features, right? So it might be a really solid ranged option for a lot of right now that are fully melee classes. I don't know, stuff like I mean raids obviously are tailored towards veteran players, or at least going to try to shuffle people towards the end game PvE side of stuff. So that for me is very exciting because I'm obviously not a new player anymore, and I feel like kind of one of my unfortunate spots with Soto is that I felt like there wasn't really that much for me, right? It's like legendary armor is great, but I already have all of the sets from raids. So I know for a lot of players that would be really great, but for me personally, I had no investment into it. But now all of this stuff, it's very new, and I feel like I can actually sink a lot of time into it and get a lot of enjoyment out of it.
I think they were really good at sort of targeting different types of players here. Like they got stuff that like, you know, sort of the raiders are excited about. Of course, new raid. They mentioned legendary modes, but they also got like housing for players who are into like, you know, sort of the fashion wars, creative side of things, right? And then, you know, the spears are sort of like relevant for everyone, I would say. Then, you know, we got like a new PvP game mode that's been announced for the PvP people.
That's the wildest thing.
Yeah, I don't think
Like
anybody
that's the
was
most
seeing that
unbelievable
coming.
thing. Like if you had told me there was a new PvP game mode coming, I wouldn't have believed you. Or if you had said that like a week before and you were like, "Yeah, I think one of the new features is going to be a PvP game mode," I would have told you you were like literally ill, like to come up with that.
We don't know when it's coming, right? They just mentioned it's in development. Still going to be a long time probably, but I know it's exciting to me. It definitely feels like they are very in touch with the community in this expansion. So you know, like nobody was asking for rifts before, right? With Soto, like rifts are, you know, I think lots of people actually enjoy rifts. Lots of people also probably hate rifts, but you know, it was like sort of a thing that came out of nowhere. But it feels like this time they were really like, hey, let's see what people want, and we'll do those things, right? They were like, oh, some people want housing, some people want raids, some people want spears. Let's just do those. And that feels kind of exciting to me. I wonder if they can like really top this. I mean, there's more things people want, right? They need to do something about the boon bar, I really think. But you know, it's really like they just went and picked a bunch of big ticket items, and I like that because like it's a smaller expansion, right? I think a lot of us sort of assumed that in these like smaller yearly expansions that they wouldn't be able to do something like housing, but the fact that it's coming anyway, it just has me personally really excited.
Yeah. I feel like I'm very cautiously optimistic just because, again, everything on paper sounds really, really crazy. But I feel like in the past, when they've tried to mess with these kinds of systems before, there's just like a lot of bugs, right? It's kind of like what Nike said, like the polish sometimes is a little bit questionable. Like I remember the last time they kind of messed with stuff with raids, they completely broke how squads worked. And that was a crazy week. And then I don't know, things like the homesteads, since they're going to be porting over a lot of things from, I'm assuming like the guild hall or the home instance and everything. I hope that there's not like weird, I don't know. I say clipping, but it probably goes farther than that because I imagine there's going to be a lot of customization, right? So I hope that the customization tools actually work. Otherwise, a major selling point of the expansion on release, if that doesn't work, I think a lot of people are going to be very upset. So
Yeah, that would be rough.
So
I very much agree with the statements. I think it's a pretty strong feature set. And, you know, it's funny, like, looking at it, I think there are two key things about JANTHIR Wilds that I think are going to lead to, I think, a much stronger experience. Is that, one, there actually is a new kind of thing to go after, and that being the homestead mechanic with, like, the player housing thing. And it's been something that's been very noticeably missing from the game for a long time, right? I think Gilsu definitely has the type of player base that is really going to enjoy this stuff. And knowing Arena, I think they'll do a good job of it. They tend to do pretty good when it comes to features, you know, kind of looking at mounts, looking at gliders, right? Like, they're pretty good at this sort of stuff usually when it comes to adding a new system. So hopefully it works out there. And also, I think the arrangement of the content is going to be much better. I think the thing that I find really good is that spears are actually coming out on release, not 6 months later, as we had with the new weapons, which came in the second quarterly update in Secrets Obscure. So I think that's really strong, actually, that's happening. The only thing that I think is still going to feels bad, actually, about JANTHIR Wilds, to already bring in the negativity. I've got to counterbalance all of this. This positive is making me sick, okay? Yeah, I don't like it. Is that there's no legendary on launch. I really would like, and maybe this is something for future expansions, if they were able to actually output, you know, an additional legendary or something like that, that could also be on the launch of the game. I think that Soto, for me, really lacked that kind of, what is this going to add to my endgame loop? Like, what am I going to keep doing? What am I doing tomorrow, right? Like, when it comes to the expansion after I've played through it, what then? Because when I buy an expansion, I do not want to be going back to the previous expansions to, like, farm old content the next day. Call me old-fashioned. I don't want to do that. I want to play the new stuff. I want to grind out the new stuff. And that was a little bit lacking for me with Soto. I think part of that was the weakness of the open world maps. So with any luck, the maps will be good. And so that will be less of an issue. Really like what they're doing with the raid, actually, but I guess more on that later. But I think it would be really nice to actually have, you know, a big grind to do on day one, you know, like that. Come on. I know this is, you know, we're not allowed to say this in Guild Wars 2. I want to sit down and blast, okay? I want to get my legendary. I want to do a big collection. I want to do a quest to get my legendary weapon.
10,000 ambient deer to collect deer meat to raise your rep with the bear.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they craft a spear for me.
That's MMOs. If you don't like it, go play a different genre of game. Because that's what an MMO is. Deal with it.
Yeah, get the deer meat.
Grind your rep with the faction to unlock the vendor. Everyone knows that's what an MMO is.
But yeah, definitely feeling good about it, and you know, I'm 100% with Emmy as well on the cautious optimism, because it is going to come down to execution. You know, I'm particularly apprehensive about encounter design, to be honest. Like, I think that Arena has been doing a good job with, I think the weapons are going to be sick. There's pretty much no way they're not. Even more epic, actually. I think they really took the feedback on the spears, or rather on the Soto weapons, maybe not being quite as explosive and kind of impactful as players were looking for. You know, stuff like Elementalist Pistol, I think, is a pretty good example of that. Not the meatiest weapon ever. So they're just going to go completely overboard with the spears. You know, the ones we've seen already, you know, they've kind of dialed the effect up to 11. And, you know, I think I like that, to be honest. It looks pretty epic. But yeah, I think they're doing a good job there, but I'm a little bit worried about the encounter design. If I look at Secrets of the Obscure, both open world and instance content, it's not looking super hot, to be honest. Like, of course, we had 2 strike missions and 1 fractal. 1 strike, yeah, no. And then One Strike was really good, as it turns out. And then the Fractal was, yeah. I think I don't know how this is possible, but ArenaNet managed to make a Fractal that players like less than Silent Surf. And honestly, that is an achievement. I will give them that. That is impressive. But yeah, it's a little bit scuffed. And Open World 2 was also a little bit scary, especially Eparch. You know, you just end boss of the expansion sits there very menacingly, like wiggling back and forth. It's content.
I believe the term is scuttle. Crabs scuttle to and fro.
But he doesn't do that. He just he doesn't move though. He just stands.
He turns.
I guess so. Yeah.
He turns to look at you ominously, but then he does nothing. I would like to caution the community.
Oh, the hype
train.
I'll
say this now.
Yeah.
About the raid. Do not go into it expecting a raid instance like Wing 7, where you have like this or Wing 6, where you have like these like incredibly spectacular like instances where like the instance itself is like holy crap, and you could like run around and like look at all the little Easter eggs and find like all the different lore tidbits, and there's like random voice acting things. And, like, you know, the arena is, like, huge, and there's, like, platforms, 3D platforms flying around. Do not expect that. It's going to be an open world meta, right? I would imagine it's going to look very simple, and that's fine. You should be happy with that. Because it's not Doom. It's not Doom. Because all that matters is, as Teapot said, the encounter design. You could have the nicest arenas ever with like the most high effort instances that they could possibly build. And if it's 3 crappy bosses, no one's going to be happy. But you could also have a very simple, you know, meta event chain where you go down, you know, the forest road and you come to a clearing and fight a boss. Then you go down the road a little further to another clearing and fight another boss. As long as the bosses kick ass, then everyone's going to be happy. But I have a feeling there's going to be people on the Reddit that are like, Wing 7 had Sabir with the flying platforms, and you went around, and this is just a boss in a forest clearing. ArenaNet's a budget expansion. If I hear that, I'm going to report you to random user, and you're going to get banned from the subreddit. And I have that kind of pull. So don't think I won't. And that's that.
There you go.
I don't know how to follow that up, to be honest.
I mean, I don't know where to go after that as well. I mean, yeah.
No, but the raids, it's like, it's. Let's be clear, it's really exciting that the raids are back. After all these years, it's happening again, and it feels like they're truly, again, we haven't seen it, that's the issue, right? But from what they've said, it kind of sounds like a proper Raids 2.0, right? Like, we've looked at the issues of the past, right? It wasn't accessible, a lot of people didn't care. Open world mode now.
Yes.
Yeah, difficulty is difficult to get right, but this time we have normal modes, and then later we also have challenge modes and legendary modes, cater to every you know, aspects of the community. The idea is sound. The idea sounds really good, but you know, I don't understand why people are cautious. Because, you know, like, Sarah's was really good, genuinely. So, like, there's definitely some, you know, they got some talent running around, working on, like, encounters. But then, like, you know, Eparch in challenge mode is just straight up broken. You know, it's actually straight up, I don't think anyone has actually killed it legit because of, like, it. So, you know, it's like, which of those two is it gonna be? If they get, like, 3 encounters that are all, like, you know, like Sarah's, and Sarah's is not bug-free, but it's not really breaking bugs. It's like, the bugs kind of work in your advantage usually. They don't really mess it up too much, right? But, like, they have to make sure this stuff is properly tested before it comes out. Like, with this raid, I feel like it's even more important this time, because it's such a big part of this expansion, right? Such a big part of the hype for JANTHIR WILDS is the new raid. They gotta make sure that these fights work properly, and
also it's probably only going to be 2 bosses.
It's confirmed 3. It's already confirmed 3, actually.
Are you sure it's like 2 bosses?
Oh yeah, it could be Bandit
like
Trio. Yeah, that's a good call.
I'm expecting a Bandit Trio sort of escort. Escort would be kick ass. You know what? That is the best litmus test for whether a person is actually a good Guild Wars 2 player, is how they feel about Wing 3 Escort.
I like Escort.
Yeah, everyone good likes Wing 3 Escort.
I hate it.
It's like the perfect
speed run. It's good if you do it fast.
Yeah, you can make it. You can go. It has like incredibly good strats. Like if you're doing like if people that are like, oh, I hate Wing 3 Escort, that's just a sign. That's just a self-expose. And so.
You know why I hate it? I hate it because everyone falls asleep and then they walk into the mines and then it's die. Like, yeah,
well, they do it on
got,
purpose.
Like, it's got the highest like wipe rate in like all of raids for me. Like because people are just like, it's Escort, and then they just die, including me. I also die on Escort.
Yeah, I think
they're waiting.
A big thing I really want to like emphasize again is like the difficulty modes is really nice with raids. I feel like one of my big
sick. Plus the open world.
I feel like one of the really big criticisms that I've had with raids before is that the jump in difficulty from open world into raids is very steep, right? And I feel like a counterexample of like where I think this is done really well is in fractals, right? So fractals, you have like tier 1, tier 2. You don't really have to think about it that much. You don't really need proper team comps. And then tier 3, tier 4, you have more mechanics. And now like having a healer, having supports is really important. And I feel like we might be able to see something similar here with the new raids where it's like open world, you kind of just go in, vibe, enjoy the like, I don't know, dialogue or the story or whatever it's called. And then once you enter into normal, it's like a bit of a step up. I think especially nowadays with power creep, like even the old Wings 1 through 4 raids are really easy. You really don't need to know anything in order to go into them. Then CM can be a step up from that for people that want to enhance their gameplay even more. And then LCM is for the people that are chasing those like fancy titles and all. I feel like it's really nice to see that kind of, in a way, built-in progression into the game, right? Because I feel like a lot of times it's like, okay, you join a training raid and then the trainer explains everything to you, but it still has a sense of like, well, I kind of got carried through that, right? Maybe not carried in terms of gameplay, but at least carried in terms of knowledge. But now people have an actual stepping stone that they can go through and feel like, you know what, I figured this out myself. I did this with guildmates. Maybe we progged it as a guild, like that kind of stuff, which I think is really cool. Maybe this is a really tall ask. This might be wishful thinking, but I really wish that they would go back and do that with the previous raids, right? Yes. So it's like right now Wing 8 now has essentially 4 difficulty modes. How cool would it be to see Wing 1 through 7 get the same treatment, right? It's like right now, let's just say the current iteration could be the normal, then even Wing 1 through 4 all get CMs, and then all of them get an LCM. It would be, in my opinion, as someone who doesn't work on the game, I think it would be very economical because obviously you don't have to reuse or you can reuse assets, right? You don't need to redo the dialogue. You don't need to do the boss animations. You just add new stuff on top of it and slap on a title for people to chase for. But yeah, it's probably wishful thinking, but I feel like for the sake of consistency, right? Because I think it's also, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to just ask, so the raid ships with the second patch.
Yeah.
And the CM, or not the second patch, the first follow-up patch. And then the CM and the LCM come one patch after, or does the CM come one patch after that, and then the LCM like on the 4th patch?
I think they're both one patch after.
Okay. So people will get good and comfortable with the normal mode before the LCM. So that's good. Yeah. That means that the race for World's First for the LCM will be quite entertaining.
Yeah, it should be.
Heck yeah.
Should be pretty good. I would personally prefer if they actually just, if it dropped closer, to be honest. Because I think one thing that was kind of exciting to me about a new raid, especially when it comes to progression, is actually not knowing the mechanics before doing the challenge mode. That's actually kind of fun, I think. Whereas now, like, we actually will. But I actually wanted to quickly derail, because this is a slight, actually it's a major derail, but I think it's such an important point. It's related to what Emmy was talking about there, and it is one of my biggest fears about not just the expansion, actually, but Guild Wars 2 in general, actually, is that I would love if they did go back and fix raids to update them and even add, like, the open world variants. The open world thing, I think, is so insanely cool, actually. I think it's giga epic, to be honest. But do we think they can do that? Like, they, to be honest, like, they really struggle. This is what they really struggle with at ArenaNet, for whatever reason, is going back and fixing old content. They're okay at fixing systems, Like you can see that with World versus World, right? Like they're looking to like address that. They've looked at a couple of reward structures across the game. They're doing balance and stuff, like skill design and so on. But when it comes to going back and fixing old content, I mean, need I not remind you that HTCM is still hilariously bugged. In fact, basically all of the EOD CMs have incredibly humorous amounts of bugs. Most of the new Fractal CMs are also very, very bugged as well. Even Serra CM is pretty buggy as well. It's got some... They're less glaring, actually, and I think that is an advantage of what Nike was talking about, going for like a simpler design compared to the more elaborate raid designs. I'm definitely expecting it to be, you know, less moving parts, let's put it like that, compared to some of the older design there. But yeah, this is something that I'm very worried about. Like especially, and I think the Epoch Fractal, the Fractal CM, is actually the perfect example of this. I think ArenaNet is in hell here. I think ArenaNet know that Fractal ain't super good, but I'm not totally sure they can actually fix it. Because with the way this model is, they gotta go. And at the risk of getting a little bit speculative here, the balance patch this time around was very small, and to be frank, wasn't super hot, in my opinion. The patch is coming up in June, and well, it's this month, but you know, I think a big part of that is because they're working on spears, so they have less time to actually invest on that balance patch, and that's obviously fair enough. But this kind of has me a little bit worried with going back and actually addressing things. I think it's especially when it comes to the raid, I think ArenaNet is super reliant on getting it right the first time. And, well, Emmy's... I think there's a lot of devs here, actually. We got Lara here, and we got Emmy. Do you think it's a good idea to... Would you feel confident, like, getting it right the first time, every single time, just releasing, just get it out there, no updates? Yeah, a bit terrifying, if you ask me, from a development perspective. And I think that is something that I do hope ArenaNet are able to find a solution to, because it doesn't look like they have that right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, maybe a quick add-on to that for context people that don't really work in like computer science. I think my answer depends a lot on the internal infrastructure, right? So it's like if you had a team with a well-established pipeline and testing things, and you have like alpha beta stages for you to run like end-to-end tests, all that kind of stuff. Honestly, I do actually feel pretty confident with shipping it out on the first try, right? Because I think that's what all of the precautions are for. But I think historically, one of the things that we have seen with ArenaNet, obviously we can't confirm because I don't think any of us actually work in there, is that their development pipeline doesn't seem very polished, right? Like a lot of times it does feel like they forego testing. It feels like a lot of times, like when you play it for the first time and it's really buggy, you're like, did they even play through this? It's a bit... So then obviously once the development infrastructure kind of collapses, then your confidence in things actually working once it actually makes it into production will go significantly down. So
It's interesting because they're talking a lot about, you know, sort of maintaining the game, right? Like they got these people that are, I guess, like going back and adding quality of life and like fixing old stuff. And those actually feel pretty significant. You know, they're going back and adding a bunch of like quality of life features. It feels like every patch they're like fixing like random events in the open worlds from like 5 expansions ago, kind of. Every patch note, they're like, we fixed this one random event in Tangled Depths. And I'm like, I didn't even realize there was a bug here. But yeah, it just feels as if the encounters are like exams, you know? It feels as if they're pretty solid at going back and fixing stuff and working on features. But as soon as it comes to like actual like fights like that, it's not, it doesn't happen nearly as much.
When
I
they
think
ship
you're
a
right. I think
Fractal, they have a 2-week window to make like changes, and if the changes don't get made in that 2-week window, it is gone forever.
That's what it feels like. So I really hope that they fix the CM on Lonely Tower. Oh my gosh, I really hope that gets fixed before they move on. But I think that like it might just be a like manpower thing, right? Because okay, so everybody in the comment section is gonna say that this is cope. But I think one of the reasons that the Fractal CM is in a pretty rough state is probably because just a lot of their encounters teams probably working on those raids right now, right? So my hope, I'm sorry, YouTube comment section, is that like you know, the raids will be super polished because they're working super hard on that, and the fractal is kind of like, oh, we just gotta get a fractal done by it, you know, on the size. But yeah, I just wonder if maybe they just don't have enough people that like know how to do encounter design, right? Like I'm guessing that's a very specific skill set. Yeah, it's a little bit rough to be honest. I do think though that a lot of fights are kind of in a state where like, you know, there's bugs, but they're not entirely breaking, right? Like for example, Silent Surf, when Silent Surf came out on challenge mode, it was in a state where it was straight up like something like over half your pools would just like end in bugs and you would just wipe. It was really, really rough. That has been mostly fixed now. Like Silent Surf is there's still bugs. It's not bug free, but at least the bugs that would just stop your run in its tracks and just like wipe everybody and you have to start over, too bad. At least the worst stuff has been fixed.
Yeah, I think I'll kind of second that. I actually haven't done the new fractal just because I've been busy, but I'm speaking at least for all of the other ones, like the EOD strikes and stuff. Like, there's
Yeah.
obviously bugs, but I think they're I think, just well documented, right? Easily reproducible. So as long as you kind of know that they can happen, you can kind of work around them, which is not ideal, obviously, right? It's like, as a
Yeah.
player, that's not your responsibility to do that. But even then, I would say they're not quite as breaking anymore. Like, I think the one I always think about is like Kining Overlook. Kining Overlook, that one, if you phase at a very specific time,
It just
you
bugs.
just
Yeah.
die. You die because the red AoEs will spawn underneath you. I think to me that's like a very like that's really frustrating to deal with.
Yeah.
But then I'm kind of thinking like, okay, like for example, on HDCM, if you phase at a specific time, like the boss will skip ahead a little bit in the mechanics. Like that one's a little bit frustrating, but for the most part, it doesn't end your run right there,
Yeah.
as long as you like know about it, right? So it's like it's not ideal, but I think honestly, even that level of polish, like let's say on release, would honestly be good enough for me. I think the most frustrating thing, and it honestly killed my desire to do the new fractals when I released, I heard from my friends, you can't clear this. Like you literally, it's impossible to clear this unless you abuse like a distort bug or something. It's like that to me instantly killed my drive to even progress it.
It's the same
So
for me because like I am really into like CM content when it comes out. Like when Silent Surf came out, I did like a 9-hour marathon just running it over and over, and I really enjoyed myself genuinely. And despite the bugs, it still felt doable, right? I was like, well, like, you know, a bunch of these bugs are gonna happen, but at least it feels like I can make it through. But with the new fractal with Lonely Tower, it just straight up feels like it's not even doable right now if you're trying to do it legit, quote unquote, right? And yeah, so like this is the first time in like genuinely like years that I am just not doing the new CM content. I'm just kind of sitting here and being like waiting and hoping that they'll fix it. And that's definitely not great timing when you've just announced your return to raid to release a boss like that, you know? So I understand the, you know, the caution for sure.
Yeah, I suddenly want to recontextualize this for our wonderful viewers as well, because we're obviously talking about fractals and raids here, but I actually want to emphasize that this also applies to the open world as well when it comes to this kind of issue of encounter design, especially given that the raid is going to have this open world component where you're going to be able to essentially play through the raid in an open world event style thing, which I think is pretty much the perfect solution to kind of like making, well, basically getting value out of developing that type of content. I wouldn't be surprised if that actually ends up being the kind of go-to format for instance content. Even if it ends up being strikes, I could see them doing like an open world version of a strike mission, like in addition to the instance version. But I think it's really important for open world too. I found the open world event design of Soto probably the most disappointing thing I actually had. It was very mediocre. I really want them to smash the encounter design here as well. And I think Emmy really hit something important there with the development pipeline as well, because it's not just that content releases with bugs. It's that it's the same bugs. That's what kind of sets the alarm bells off for me, actually. More than the fact that there's bugs. Like, we know that ArenaNet doesn't really have a team that kind of tests, like, raid content and CM content. Like, you know, Cameron, like, I mean, he was obviously joking about it, but I think it was obviously true. They didn't beat HTCM, and I assume they didn't beat Sarah CM, and I doubt they beat. In fact, no, they didn't beat Epoch CM. Absolutely no way did they beat that in a million years. So I think it's really important that they do actually have people who test this stuff, both the open world as well, so people know how it feels. But also, it's very weird to me that it's the same bugs. Why is it that boons mess up every single boss? Hell, Ceres is still bugged, actually. Like, if the ad hits you with the beam, it will desynchronize it the next time it appears. Very fun on sub 10%. Love to see that. Very good. Why is it that pets get hit? Why are there invisible hitboxes all the time? It's like the same bugs keep coming back over and over again. That is very worrying to me. It's very weird. There's also a bug on Epoch where you can just move them outside of the boss arena. Whoops. Unlucky. With that one.
I think it's actually totally okay for the devs not to beat the super hard fights. I actually think that's totally fine. Because, like, if you want to make a fight that's, like, challenging for world's first race, right? You gotta make a fight that's probably a little bit harder than what you yourself might be able to do, right? If you want to make something that's challenging for the best players in the game, you gotta overtune it a bit. But my issue is that a lot of these bugs, I feel like, are quite obvious at just 1 or 2 run-throughs, right? And I imagine even if you're, like, giving yourself, like, double health or double damage, right, to just test it, I feel like a lot of this stuff should be obvious even in those situations, right? Like, you know, Kanaksai has regen, and he regens himself back to the previous phase and then does the transition another time. Like, I feel like that should be one of those things that, like, you know, that should be caught easily. And I don't know, I think maybe they just need to get, like, a testing team or something. Like, you know, get, like, I'm not sure how doable this is, but get, like, a group of players, you know, get them in there before the content comes out, let them test it, make sure you try it in, like, real situations with, like, real builds and, like, real boons and real pets running around and all that sort of stuff, right? Because I feel like a lot of these bugs don't necessarily stem from them not having beat it, but just feels like, you know, like it's been tested in specific circumstances, right? Like, it's Kanaksai probably got tested without regen on the team, right? Or something like that. I think they, especially for this raid, they gotta nail the fights. It doesn't have to be entirely bug free, but they gotta nail that they don't have those bugs that just stop your run and just make the whole experience super frustrating.
Agreed. And, you know, I think that it is kind of what you were talking about there. I think is really important. Like, I think having players who are familiar with the game and know how Guild Wars 2 is supposed to play out, having players like that on the testing team, I think is essential. I don't think you need to be able to beat Sarah CM. I don't think that's actually necessary. I think you're completely right. But I think they do need people who know how the game is supposed to feel, who know how the game is supposed to play out and how it works mechanically, right? Because, again, you know, let's go in on Epoch again. If you play through that once, even on normal mode, you go, wow, no. Pretty much. Like,
actually, like the normal mode.
Yeah, I
like the normal mode.
Oh my, yeah, nice cope, Lara. Like, that's actually crazy.
I have to be a bit positive again, you know. Like, I was so negative for the past 10 minutes.
And I want to slightly get ahead of the comments here, by the way, like, because we talked now for about 20 minutes about basically bugs and testing. I want to kind of underline this. Yes, this is actually probably the biggest concern about the expansion by far. The reason we're talking about this is because it's one of the biggest issues with Soto, the previous expansion, and it's pretty much the thing that scares me, and I think many others, the most about content going forwards. I'm not worried about the feature set. The feature set is actually sick. I'm loving the way they've designed, that they've approached raids. I think new weapons, really, really cool. I think player housing, it's not for me, but I think they'll do a great job. I'm obviously expecting the content to be good. It's Guild Wars 2. It's gonna look real pretty. It's gonna sound real pretty. Very nice. You know, cool, right? The only thing I'm worried about is are they going to be able to actually execute it or just completely flub it? Right? Like that's like the thing. And that's why this is an important topic. It is the most important topic about Guild Wars 2 JANTHIR Wilds. They need to make sure the content actually works, and if it doesn't, they need to fix it. Like I don't know.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of, again, like cautious optimism is I feel like at least historically on release, their expansion launches have been pretty smooth, right? Like no release, not any server instability. It's like at least the open world story and the metas don't seem to get hard locked out, right? Which would be extremely frustrating for like a new extension. So I feel like historically they've been pretty good about that. It does always feel like a lot of the times the bugs are centered around instant stuff, whether that's like instant story minutes or instant story missions or instance bosses like strikes, raids, fractals, like that kind of stuff. And like maybe some things that are kind of annoying, but for the most part, okay, you're like, all right, I'll come back to this later and then I'll play it later, right? So like maybe an event is weird and an NPC gets stuck somewhere and it doesn't actually move to like the next location. I think things like that, again, I want to be cautiously optimistic. I feel like they have a pretty good track record about, like, I don't remember the game ever going down for 2 hours on release, which I know has happened in other games. So maybe fingers are crossed that this one will also be really smooth. Another thing I do want to point out is I do genuinely think ArenaNet's been doing a really good job with going back with especially all of the QOL fixes, right? So I feel like maybe this is just me projecting, but I feel like they know that like the game does not feel very polished in a lot of like the old systems and stuff. So they have been trying to revisit those old systems. And I feel like once you've polished it once, it kind of carries through, right? It's one less area where things can break. So maybe because they've been introducing all of these other like things that and all of these other fixes, this one will be a lot smoother on release. So fingers are crossed.
Yeah,
I agree. I think just
so.
in general, like I think again, they definitely can do it. There's definitely been a ton of fights that have felt like really good on launch as well. Like, you know, the Sarah's World's first race was, in my opinion, really, really exciting. So they just, again, sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. They just got to make sure that this is one of those times that they nail it. They got to make sure. But I'm optimistic too.
Yeah. We'll certainly have to see. Now that we successfully derailed for a good chunk of time, I guess we can probably actually talk about some of the actual features of the expansion. To be honest, let's see, where do we want to go? I mean, we talked about the raid a little bit. You know, let's mix it up. You know, we can't talk about raids all the time. You know, let's talk about the Warclaw. No, okay, we're not talking about that. I guess we'll do that at some point. Okay, that's
once they preview the skills, then we can judge it. It's hard to judge without seeing the new skills, I would say.
You know, I want to talk about.
They said double jump, didn't they?
Yeah. There was
How does that? What is a double jump? Like you go up and then you can jump again?
Yeah, you're gonna be like. I mean, you're gonna be like a mountain goat, like jumping up the.
Yeah.
Oh, so you'll be able to like perch yourself on like a sheer cliff?
Maybe, I don't know. I guess it's unclear. It's gonna be weird to make it not overlap with the fact that you have literal fly hack with the sky scale and also the springer.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it's gonna be a little,
I think it's smart,
complex.
Though.
Maybe you get double bear rep when you kill mobs with your Warclaw versus your sky scale. So you're subtly encouraged to tease the Warclaw.
I wonder if they'll let you throw spears, because that's the thing in WILDS, right? Where you throw like a spear to dismount somebody. This being the spear expansion and all.
Yeah, that would make sense actually.
I do actually think that the double jump is smart though, right? Because you've sort of got the sort of medium speed agile mounts, right? We've got the Raptor and the Jackal. The Raptor's like really nice on like flat terrain, whereas the Jackal's a bit nicer on more rugged terrain, right? And this will be like that. But then if it's more vertical, you can just double jump without having to switch to your like Springer or Sky skill, right? But we're actually talking about the Warclaw now.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about the Warclaw.
I think we've covered it. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's accurate. It's cute.
Yeah, we can maybe come back to it later, because I think it is interesting that they went with that mount, I suppose. But
it's probably the one mount that people haven't bought a lot of skins for, so there's a lot of room for sales growth.
Yep, that's true.
I mean, I don't think I'm wrong in that they were like, what can we monetize the best?
Yeah, I think it should have been the Beetle. But anyway, we're not doing that. Okay, right. I have a very important question. I don't get player housing at all. It is almost certainly a feature I will never interact with. However, before everyone eats me alive, I know that people like it, and actually, that's cool. I like that people are going to like it. Very high energy. However, I want you lot to explain to me why. Why do people like this? What is the player housing thing? Why are people going crazy? What is good about it? Let's go.
So, a little story is that back in the olden days, the days of yore, playing Morrowind, single player, Elder Scrolls, RPG, every time I would do a playthrough, I would find an NPC who wasn't relevant to the story and brutally murder them and throw their body in the streets, and I would take over their house. And I would collect weapons that were like rare weapons or magic items that I wasn't ever going to use, but they were rare. And I would like put them on the table in the house in various places. So anyone who walked into this house, even though it's a single player game, would see my vast collection of magical items. And that is sort of a player housing situation, but impromptu, I guess. And as long as you can do stuff like that, then it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think a big thing is like, obviously not everybody's going to love player housing, but there's a reason why games like, The Sims or I don't know, City Skylines, stuff like that. It's like these games are very popular for a reason, right? And I feel like a big part of it is expression in the game. It's like you can genuinely call this place your own. You can build insane looking like I don't know, like features. Like I've seen stuff like in Path of Exile where they'll use like floor textures to create certain looks on the ground and everything. You can like put together like
very not safe for work looks as well.
Yeah.
And then you can trade the presets to other people so they can have the same anime girls with various lacking of clothing in their hideout. Yeah, it's good.
So I feel like that's like a really big thing. It's just like it gives people the option, right, to like access yourself in the game. And I feel like another really big thing is like you don't have to be one side or the other, right? This is obviously a very much a gradient. You'll have some people with like hyper efficient home instance farming like routes and everything, where you just go down the line pressing F over and over again, and maybe your crafting station is right there, so you can immediately craft your pyramids. You'll have like the people that make it hyper efficient and then never step in there again. And then you'll have other people that are making like roller beetle race tracks or griffin courses or all that kind of stuff. And then they can be able to share that with their friends. And then you might have some people in the middle that might just really like the home instance cats. Like they like watching the cats fight each other and stuff, right? And they go there and like spend like 5 minutes just kind of enjoying that. I feel like the big part of this is just it's very much a gradient, and you can kind of just do it with it whatever you want. And I feel like another really big thing that at least for me is really interesting, it's a little bit of a derail, is I'm really interested in the economic side of this, right? So obligatory disclaimer, I am not an economist or anything, but I feel like one of the big things is that it can act as a really big gold sink into the game, right? So it can essentially bring a lot of value to materials that are otherwise underutilized, or even just as a way to remove currency from the economy. Because just an observation that I had with Soto is that Soto actually kind of did the opposite. It injected a lot of gold into the game without, I think, really that many ways to actually spend that gold, right? Other than, of course, like the legendary armor was obviously a very big sink. But again, there were a lot of players in my boat or PvP and Wolf vs. World people where they already had their legendary armor. So they didn't really feel the need to spend that money. So I feel like here there's a potential for there to be massive gold sinks, which can then stabilize the economy a little bit more. Because something I do want to point out is that in general, in Guild Wars 2, the actual amount of liquid gold, like currency in your wallet, is actually not that high relative to the amount of materials that you get, right? So I would say, like, for example, materials probably constitute like 90% of the value that you get whenever you're doing a meta event or open world events or even like raids and stuff, right? So the problem with this is then obviously you're going to see things like inflation, where now if you have a lot of gold that people can just spend right away, and there's not that many efficient ways to take it out through like the trading post tax or like the waypoint fees and all that kind of stuff, then things are just going to naturally start getting more and more expensive. And I feel like this could potentially be a way to remove a lot of that from the game. Just at least something that I'm very interested in.
I'm also excited about it. Like personally, I'm not like a huge home instance fan. Like I'm not going to spend a lot of time decorating it, but I like it for the potential of giving the game a long-term reward system. Like you can add you know, player housing decorations from raid that come as raid drops. You can add player housing. Any content in the game can now have player housing rewards added to it, and it's just like a little carrot to make you actually care about that content that didn't exist before. And it's something that will be it's a new way to reward players that will last like forever. Like they can add more player housing rewards from now until the, you know, end of development. And that is something that I think is potentially very good from a health of the game perspective.
How do they make that work cross expansion though? Like that would be the question I would have there. Is how
I'd imagine that every expansion is going to have a new or multiple,
just play basically like a mastery every time for a new instance, basically like a
like if you want to, you know, if you don't want your house to be in JANTHIR Wilds and you'd rather relocate it to like a penthouse in New Kaineng City in the next Cantha expansion, you'll be able to do that. And
that'll be awesome.
Sure. And eventually get to the point where, you know, very customizable like sort of style, because like, you know, not everyone vibes with like living in some bear's wooden shack. That's pretty low rent. I think most people have, you know, more sophisticated tastes.
Yeah.
They want, you know, indoor plumbing.
Not a fan of the bear, and you know, not going for that.
If like Morrowind, I can brutally murder the bear and toss his corpse outside, and then I am much more interested in acquiring the house. I feel like murdering the occupant is a key factor in player housing.
He's scared of my bear.
In every game.
Okay.
Yep.
He's scared of my bear.
Yeah.
Go
sorry,
it's
go ahead.
It's like Fashion Wars, right? Why do people like Fashion Wars? People like customizing something, like you know, expressing themselves, right? Not everybody cares about Fashion Wars and Guilders too, right? Some people just slap on like the first random outfit they get and use that for like 7,000 hours. But some people, they'll spend like hours trying to make the perfect fashion and making cosplays and stuff, right? I feel like it's like that.
And then you steal it.
Then
you steal it, yeah.
Yes.
When are they adding housing inspection? Oh my gosh.
That's one of the things I hope. I hope that the instances are at least somewhat public, right? So like maybe there's like a search repository for your friends, or you can just visit if you're like mutually added or something like that. You can go to each other's like houses. It's something that I really hope, because I plan to go pretty hard on the housing. So I would like to be able to show it off to other people.
You could have tea parties at your house. I'm sure all the role players are going to be all about that. And they're going to have the Caudicus mirror above the bed, where the bear and their little Asura buddies can get together and role play. It's gonna be good.
Yeah,
there's a lot of potential here.
To bring it back to sanity, I think that for sure, adding a new reward structure that isn't just 2 greens and a blue, right, is 100% going to be good. I think that's one of the areas where the game really struggles, right? I think that's a very agreed upon concern that, you know, especially players who play the game for a while feel, is that the game just isn't very rewarding, right? Because it just gives you gold. Like, oh, wow, I got an Ascended drop. Wow, incredible. I'll add that to my collection in my bank, pretty much. Especially if you get to the point where you start getting a couple of legendaries. Like, that's when the game like really starts to lose all value. You know, I'm at the point right now where I have this is fantastic. I love this. I just vendor all of the loot I get from raids because I can't be bothered to wait for the TP to lag. And yeah, exactly. I get that reaction from people every single time. And honestly, I love it. It's so good. I do it on stream on purpose because I know that it like causes people actual pain. And that's content to me. It brightens my day. It really does. So yeah, I think adding meaningful long-term roads is good. I think adding systems like that, if it's going to be housing, if it's going to be a different type of thing that you can go after in the next expansion. Yeah, I guess the one thing I am kind of struggling with is like, how do they take it cross-expansion? I think that it might end up being isolated to JANTHIR because it's, I don't know, I'm not sure if they can justify like making new rewards and then putting it in an expansion that doesn't have housing. They would have to do every expansion has a housing thing, which wouldn't be completely insane because they did it with guild halls, by the way. If they could put that,
guild halls are way higher effort.
Yeah, way higher effort. Yeah, and probably nowhere near as high engagement, right? Let's be honest here. With that stuff. Speaking with
player housing will have 100%. Like even people that don't like care about the player housing will at least unlock their player house.
Yeah, that's something I like about it. because like the guild hall decoration system is really good in my opinion. Like you can do some awesome stuff with the guild hall decoration system, but right now it's only like guild officers, right, that can really engage with that system. There's so many players that have never even touched the guild hall decoration system, and it's just like huge feature, right? So just bringing that to more people, giving people their own little space. Like I assume the system is going to be working similar. They actually confirmed it's going to be a separate crafting profession. They confirmed that in like a forum post.
Yeah,
That's
scribing
interesting.
too,
Yeah.
which is strange. But yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think they're doing it because scribing is a bit weird, if we're being honest, right? It's yeah. It's the odd one out.
If it lowers the cost of writs, I'm for it.
Ooh, that would be big actually.
2 gold a writ is not good.
You can blame Ceres for that. That's actually Ceres' fault, no joke. Everyone's like
sucking
spamming
writs out of the economy.
It actually is.
Like
yeah. Well, you know, on week 1, the price of writs actually went up massively, like doubled when people were doing progression. It was extremely
funny. People need
funny.
to make alt accounts, do CMs, and get their little 20 free writ things, and then you know, flood the market.
Yeah. I mean, I could just load up a couple of the alts. Let's make that happen. Easy. Do 10 alts, that's 200 writs per CM kill, right? That's huge. Insane. Actually, giga gold right there. Wait, where are we even going with this? Oh, no. We're talking scribing.
We're talking about new professions.
Yeah, so with the housing, there's another angle. Your nodes from your home instance carry over to your player housing, which is a strong incentive to buy the nodes, like the perma nodes. And therefore also buying Blackline keys where people can gamba and try to get more nodes for their home instance, which is a huge, huge value.
Yeah. I feel like that might be, I feel like if you have someone that's like super gung-ho about their housing, you might be able to just like leech theirs, right? Similar to how the home instance system works right now. But I would actually argue, I think even like the current nodes in their state is a pretty good gold sink and stuff. They're not nearly as expensive as they used to be. I actually know this very much from experience because I tried to max out my home instance nodes before they had the price drop. So I spent a lot of money on that has now disappeared into the ether. But I think, I don't know. I feel like I think the nodes would be nice for people to have, but I don't see the actual like interaction with the nodes being that different compared to how it is now. Right. It's like I feel like nowadays like people just have a guild leader or someone in their guild that they can poke, or they ask in map chat, or if anyone has like a full home instance, and then are able to get it that way.
I never cared about home instance nodes ever, but now I care. Just because it's like in my house.
To collect now.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, it's a good way to waste gold. That's for sure. You know, you can, if you want to check this, you can go to fast farming and see that some of them like take, I think, something like 1,000 days to pay off and become profitable. So enjoy that. You're in it for the long haul, right? You're in it for the grind. There, it's a good content.
There's a bunch of notes on like the gem store. And I know loads of people who got like their deluxe ultimate version of JANTHIR vaults to get the 4,000 gems, and then just immediately spend it on home instance nodes, like the ones that are on the gem store.
Let's go.
Yeah, the plots are really nice because you can make primers using the stuff.
Yeah, I have those. Hopefully we get our garden, our little home instance garden in our player house. That would be nice.
Grow your primers.
Farming profession when?
The primers.
Give me my Stardew roleplay.
Honestly, some of that could be pretty interesting, I think, actually, if they added that. I mean, it almost felt that they were kind of experimenting with that, right? When they were adding stuff like Ascended Chef, and of course the garden patches that you could have there, and that you can plant the different seeds and stuff like that, and you can you have that slight interactivity. I could honestly see them doing that at some point if they want to do that. If they could add a new feature to the expansion. And the chat's brought some good points that they just keep, like in the same way that they add new mount skins, they'll just keep adding like new chair skins and stuff as well. That's kind of a good point as well, to be honest. And I guess the homestead, if they keep adding new rewards to it, it will be like a big draw, I guess, for players. I guess the thing that I was finding, more specifically, the thing that I was talking about when I said, like, could they make rewards? I was foolishly thinking about in-game rewards. I was thinking, like, what if you drop a chair in the next expansion that you can't use because of JANTHIR, right? That's kind of where I was kind of getting stuck on how can they keep designing rewards for something in future expansions, is because I was assuming that you would actually get these from in-game activities, which I hope they do, by the way. But it is entirely possible that that may not end up being the case. Yeah, I mean, like, you know, it'd be really cool to get a reward for the new raid, right? Even the open world version, you can get like a cool statue or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say a new chair, right? Because 5 through 7, when you complete the CMs with everything, and then you can buy from the vendor, you can buy like the Doom's bench or like the pile of gold or all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, if you could add the chairs,
that would be
Doom's
cool.
bench in your player house.
Yeah, it's like if you could add those chairs into the player house, like you can have like a row of all of your raid chairs and everything, and then now slap on the Wing 8 LCM one.
You can sit on Doom's bench, like kind of like, you know how the pose that you have when you're on the bench is where you're kind of bored while you're watching two little Asuras RP on your heart-shaped bed that you bought in the gem store, and it's just, the potential is just humongous.
You're kind of fixated on this.
Yeah, it's money. Nike. It's all about making money.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it's almost like a little too much. Like, do you have to a concession or something?
At this point, they just need to monetize the game. Let's go.
Yeah.
Cash in. They cultivated this audience. This community are all either bears or otters. We all know that. That's 90% of the Guild Wars 2 community. And if that's the community they cultivated, time to cash in. Speaking of Stardew Valley, that's the field they've sowed. Now it's time to reap.
I mean, it's certainly going to be a big payday, right? Like they're gonna farm.
If I have to put up with the furries in the community, the furries might as well be subsidizing the game by buying some stuff.
Yeah,
we can have parties at people's houses now, in-game parties.
You know, an interesting kind of side effect of this, and this is, they haven't talked about this just yet, actually. Or talked about this, but there's a couple of things that I think might happen. I think that there might be some kind of benefits to the guild hall, actually, that might end up because of player housing. I seem to recall there was actually the classic ArenaNet. I think this actually was slightly touched upon in a very obscure online gaming journalism outlet. Someone can maybe find that. If maybe I was hallucinating, I'm not sure. But I think this was actually commented on. But I'm expecting some improvements to the guild hall as well. There is some evidence outside of my hallucinations for that, by the way. Recently, they have actually started to fix one of the bugs that's been with guild halls basically since forever, where instances will basically immediately fill up, and then basically you'll get trapped in different versions of your own guild hall. It's made it really annoying to kind of run guild gatherings or like larger guild events, like GVG, for example, or beetle racing. That kind of activity was super inconvenient. They've actually started to fix that. That was just last patch. It was like not even like a main patch. It was like a little hot fix they just put in the game. They changed the way the instancing works. That is actually really exciting, in my opinion, because I think that the guild hall is incredibly powerful. I'm a huge fan. You know, like one of the games that I have put a lot of time into, was important in my development as a gamer, was Roblox and Little Big Planet. I love player-driven content. I think it is one of the coolest things, actually, about online gaming, that allows you some kind of degree of control over the environment and what you can actually end up making. I think that stuff is incredibly cool. So anything that improves that is what I'm about, okay? Because, you know, like, you might go, but what, you think player housing is worthless, Teapot? The thing is, that's because player housing doesn't have functionality. The guild hall actually has sick functionality. You can make cool roller beetle track. You can make a GVG PvP arena, okay? All that kind of stuff. Very exciting. If that ends up getting some improvements there, there's some big potential. I'd love the ability to be able to publicly list your guild hall in the same way that I imagine you'll be able to probably publicly list your house, so that other people can look at it and you can kind of flex on people with all of your crazy decorations. Okay, and like how you've managed to like draw a penis with Gorseval statues. Okay, believe me, Bill would do that stuff. Like, you know, like, yeah, that's good content, right? Like, I don't know, I'm pretty hyped about that. And I'm expecting, again, the player housing to be probably the same tech as the guild hall, but made better, obviously, with that Sims 4 developer power. Let's go. I
gotta praise ArenaNet on, because when they're gonna do a feature like this, they should, that's outside of like their, you know, their normal wheelhouse, don't try to reinvent the wheel with the devs you have. Like, you know, open the checkbook a little bit, open the wallet, and go get someone who's proven to know what they're doing in this field and implement the feature the right way. That's like the totally right thing to do. When they did the first raids, they went out and hired Crystal Reed, and you know, that was the right move. Like, imagine if they had tried to do that with tried to do raids with like the devs they already had. It would have been really bad, like really bad.
You know, so... they should pull a New World and go full circle and hire Manaworks, like New World did, right?
Oh yeah,
for the encounter design.
New World's doing really well.
Oh my god!
In the news this week has been fantastic.
This is a Guild Wars 2 show. We can't talk about that because it will cause me actual psychic pain. And we don't need that here. Oh man, that is brutal. That is, look, if ever you lot, right, actually, I'm going to make this related to the video game known as Guild Wars 2. If you guys ever think that ArenaNet fumble an announcement, okay, or scuff up their marketing, oh boy, go take a look at the latest New World stuff. Wow. I didn't have any expectations, and I was still blown away with what a complete disaster that announcement is. But anyway, I'll leave that for the viewer. An exercise to the viewer to go and investigate that. I think he'll have some fun. But anyway, derailing. Any kind of extra thoughts on housing?
Not housing, but I want to go off of what you just said with like the announcement and everything. Something that I find really interesting, I'm kind of glad that they're doing, is I really like the way that they're doing the announcement this time. I feel like on the same week that the announcement drops and everything, all of the partners got like, you know, codes to essentially do giveaways and essentially do some of the marketing for them. They've been kind of drip feeding the information a lot more, right? So they had kind of like one overarching summary with like just a paragraph on each one. And then now they're going into each one more in depth, right? With like the videos on the new spear animations or like the blog posts on like, here's what we were trying to go with XYZ things. And like I feel like they've also even like been responding to forum posts, right, about like very commonly asked questions. I feel like this is a very big difference compared to, at least when I was like looking at Soda. I feel like they kind of like info dumped a lot of stuff and then it was completely silent, right, until like the expansion came out. And then I feel like during that time a lot of people, I don't want to say forgot, but definitely the hype died down, right? I feel like the amount of publicization that the expansion got definitely died down a lot. So this time I feel like if they just keep on doing this, where like, you know, we still have like, how long is it? Like 2 months or so, or 2 or 3 months until it comes out. If throughout this entire 2 to 3 month period, they keep on giving more information, they keep on doing those little teasers with like the spear animations, or maybe they can give us a teaser of like, they set the new PvP game mode, like maybe they'll drop like some visuals on that, or even things like, I don't know, maybe like they've been doing like the balance patch live streams, right? So what if they did like another official live stream where they like discuss stuff? I feel like there's a lot of potential here for them to really amp up their marketing, because I know that historically ANET's marketing has not really been the strongest.
I
like
really want them to give us a little bit more of a flavor of what's going on in the expansion. To be honest, like this to me, when it comes to ANET marketing, I think is the thing that I get
to spoil the story.
I guess I disagree with. Yeah. This is the crux of it, right? Like, and I don't know. Like, maybe I was actually kind of hyped by the Soto stuff because they kind of did do this a little bit more. If we compare kind of like for like, with the Soto expansion announcement compared to the JANTHIR WILDS one, I actually really like the Soto one. It didn't really talk about features whatsoever, but it was very focused about like the setting and the theme. Had that incredibly cool Ceres laugh and tease 2-second like scary clip at the end. That is fire to me. That is your Lich King moment that gets all the nerds excited. Love to see that. And I do think that the lack of kind of big setup for the story and kind of like, oh yeah, the big bad, I'm expecting the expansion to be very cozy, to be honest. You know, it's, I wouldn't be super surprised if the open world was almost a little bit like Amnoon, to be honest, which it scares me a little bit, to be perfectly honest, but who knows? We'll find out when we get there. So that might be to do with it. But yeah, I don't know. I think they could do a bit of a better job of kind of hyping up like the setting. Like, what are we doing? Where are we going? Let's go. Because right now, like the hype was essentially, look, it looks pretty, and there's a white mantle here, and there's
well, there might be white mantle here. It's just like you hear an Asura going, what if there's white mantle here? Like that could just be a misdirect. There might not even be any white mantle there. It could be like we get there and it's like centaurs are living on like white mantle like ruins.
Yeah.
I gotta say though, like lore-wise, as like a certified lore nerd, I'm really excited. Like again, they seem to be teasing possible Titan stuff, and it's like JANTHIR, right? Like I remember when I was 12 and I played like Eye of the North. It had like just come out, and I was looking at like the world map. I think it was like the pre-patch. Like Eye of the North wasn't out yet, but like the pre-patch hit, and I saw like this island on the map, and I was like, clearly that's gonna be the finale, right? There's this spooky islands up there. That's gonna be where Eye of the North ends. It wasn't where Eye of the North ended, and now we're like 15 years later. Now we finally get to go there. I waited 15 years for this moment.
Yeah,
straight up.
it's happening.
So like, just the fact that it's like JANTHIR, like and like there seems to be some Bloodstone stuff in the trailer. Lore-wise, I am more excited than I was for Soda. And like Soda was pretty cool. It was like, whoa, there is that a Seer, is that Zoja, and all that stuff. But
Zoja.
like I am more excited this time. Just it feels. I think all our lore nerds are excited too.
Yeah, I feel like maybe this is a testament to the fact that I never really played the Guild Wars games for like the story and stuff, because I've actually never played Guild Wars 1. The entire reason why I started playing Guild Wars 2 in the first place is just because it was the only non-subscription based MMO, and I was a poor college student at the time, so I didn't want to have to pay for that every time. But yeah, I don't know. I guess like for me, for like seeing all of the feature teasers, right? So again, like I keep on bringing back the spear because that's the one that they've dripped so far, and like I guess like the whole raids thing and everything as well. To me, that's a lot more exciting than I think the actual setting and all. I guess maybe it's just I didn't have that much emotional investment into the story in the first place, which I guess maybe is also a little bit of a unfortunate commentary that I feel like the story was not really, I think, executed super well. And Soto, I feel like it was definitely a bit rushed in a lot of places. So maybe it's like the reason why I'm not invested in Guild Wars 2 stories because the actual storytelling, like the narrative ways that they approached it was not the strongest. So it could be that like if they have a massive comeback with the story here, it could be something that people look forward to more in the future. But I know, at least know like within my own community, I don't think too many people have been super like excited about the lore side of things, but like people are talking about like the new raid every day. People are talking about the new weapons every day. People are talking about even like the potential PvP game mode like pretty much every day. So to me, that's where a lot of my hype stems from.
Yeah.
I hope the Titans in Guild Wars 2 are like the Titans in Guild Wars 1, where you kill them and it turns into a smaller Titan.
Ooh.
And then you kill that one. That's a different profession. And then you kill that one and it turns into two like melee Titans that are actually kind of nasty. So, you know, that'd be pretty sweet. Let's go back to old school Titans.
To go back to the kind of the promotion and the hype thing though, I want to see some dev streams. Okay, because you know what? Here's the thing. The developers are actually very entertaining. You have, of course, Roy Marks. You have CMC, the Hydration Man. You have Trig, entertain. Have you read Trig's posts? He's talking about like biting with the force of a wolf's jaw. Okay, that's pretty hype, you know. And you have Grouch. I think these are all really great communicators. And I'd absolutely love to see some videos and some streams, actually, just talking about the expansions, because I completely agree with Emmy. I think their communication this time has been really good. They're not dropping it all in one go. They kind of gave us a bit of a high-level little tease, right, with the, the expansion announcement, and then boom, we get a spear post immediately. They're just keeping us on the hook. Then boom, there's another one coming. Might be some housing news as well. Over the next couple of weeks, where they're going to go over these systems and talk about that stuff. I really like that. Very exciting. I'd like to take it an extra step further because, look, I'm going to say it. I actually look forward to the balance streams purely because I think there is just such a great energy about them. Like the devs are having fun. They're cracking jokes. And they're really entertaining, skilled communicators, actually. I want to see more of that. As well. I think it's awesome when the devs kind of have that forward-facing approach, especially the game director. And by the way, Grouch is really good at it. I think it really kind of humanizes the developers and kind of builds a really good trust and rapport between the player base and, of course, the studio, which I think is very important, has been lacking very much so over the, kind of history of the game, certainly the past 5 years or so. So I would like to see that, at least on launch, or at least in some way. Or maybe they just come on TeaTime and I get to farm some content as well. Look, the possibilities really are endless. I'm just going to say it.
Just as long as whatever live streams they do, they, show us stuff. Not like, hey, we can't turn the camera this way because then you'll see something.
You like the rock.
Look at this rock.
Yeah. Look at the texturing on this rock. Or the Arborstone stream, which Lara,
here's our
claims to enjoy.
Talking about this every single time.
Yeah, I'm never going to let this go. Lara claims to enjoy the Arborstone gameplay reveal
Should I go find
stream.
the VOD of that live stream of me reacting to that and just like upload it just to prove that
You should react to you reacting to it and just being like, what was I thinking?
No.
Oh my god.
I love Arborstone. Oh my god.
I mean, Arborstone is a fine instance, but that stream, I think the problem was they said it was a gameplay stream, so people were like, oh, sweet, they're gonna show us like, one of the strike bosses or one of the
giant
meta
crab,
events.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Show us the crab, deliver a crab. And then instead it was like, look at this arch. Look at the brickwork in this room. Oh yeah, that was rough. That was rough.
Before we move on, I actually want to talk about the elephant in the room. Okay, the Soto elephant in the room. Soto did not actually have that much content in terms of volume, especially in the follow-up updates.
Neither width nor depth.
Yeah, with the story or with the amount of open world content that actually got released. I think Soto was the first expansion where I think players who played mostly for story and open world were actually dissatisfied. That, I think, is a really interesting point to talk about. And do we think that... What do we think JANTHIR Wilds looks like in terms of the amount of content that is coming out, in terms of the story, in terms of the open world, and like how are they going to approach this? Like, because they didn't really talk about this in the retrospective, to be honest. They kind of noodled about the map, like, oh yeah, they're going to do it in 2 instead of 3, which I think is a good strategy. I like the fact that the raid is essentially replacing the first open world map and will be open world content, so they're probably getting some more value there, some more kind of gameplay hours, a bit more depth to the content there with raid, then the open world map after that. Like, how are we thinking about this? Like, what does the content volume look like in JANTHIR Wilds compared to Soto? Is it going to be more? Is it going to be the same but organized better? What do we think?
I think the same but organized better. Mostly because they're going to have, like you said, the raid patch, which will most likely mean that the 3 story patches after that will have, a quarter more content, to each of them. So it'll be the same overall content. I think what they need to do is figure out a way to add, because like you have to have filler. You can't just let people like blast the story instances and complain about the amount of hour, like the fact that it was only like 45 minutes of story instances. You do need that fill up the green bar thing, but you can't just have it be do events to fill up the green bar. It has to be obfuscated in a way where it feels like what you're doing isn't just, because filling up the green bar is like dissonant, right? Like that's anti-immersion. Because like the green bar is not part of the story. That's like a game system that's layered on top. So it's really immersion breaking. They have to figure out a way to have that filler that doesn't break your immersion. And it might very well be that they have to just force you to do the meta event. Because like right now, like you could in theory do the last story and not touch the meta event.
And it makes no sense. It actually doesn't make sense.
No sense.
Yeah.
So and I know why they didn't force people, because it's like, oh, well, people might only log in for 15 minutes. They can't sit there for the whole event. I think you might just have to bite the bullet and be like, the next story step is do the meta event.
In Soto, they sort of did that in like an optional way. Like, I actually kind of like how they did it in base Soto. At some point, they went like, do the meta event, or you can also like fill this bar and do regular events. So I think that's kind of like suggests to people like this is when the meta takes place in the story. I thought that was kind of a clever way of doing it. And it still means that, if like 10 years from now, not a lot of people in the meta. Maybe you're playing at a weird time zone, right? You can still do this story. You don't get like locked out of it.
Yeah.
I think they just need to repeat that.
That would be the
I
issue.
100% agree.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I 100% agree though with you on like the take on like how much content are we getting. I think it'll be very slightly more because raid is like 3 encounters before we got 2 strikes. So like we'll get 3 fights this time, which I think will feel a lot better and stuff too. Again, let's hope it's not Bandit Trio.
Who said 3 encounters? I can't stop thinking about that now. Who brought that up? It was one of you. Okay, and now I feel cursed because I was like, oh my god, it's going to be 3 bosses. It's going to be amazing. I'm hyped. And then someone here said, what if it's escort? Now I'm like, it's over. It's actually fucking over. Oh my god.
3 bandit trios. 9 bandits. 9 bandits.
Yeah. I think something that is really important to me is like replayability, right? It's like I feel like sometimes some meta events I do it once and then I never really feel the desire to do it again, right? But then other meta events, I'll do them every day. I'll do them multiple times per day, right? It's like the example I always use is like Dragon's Den on release was obviously very controversial, but it was genuinely a very fun event. Even to this day, even though it's been nerfed and it's significantly easier now, it's just a fun event to do. I find the final boss to be pretty fun. You can see like the different commanders and like TP Overflow, Hardstuck. They've come up with like their own ways of like commanding and all that kind of stuff. And it's a really great community experience. So for me, it made it, I guess, in a way like pseudo, like a lot more content just because I felt like, okay, I can do this every day. And if you do it every day, even if it's only 15 minutes every day, then you're not looking at, 15 minutes of content. You're looking at 2 hours, 3 hours over the course of like a few weeks, right? So I don't know. I think that's a very big thing because I think especially with Soto, I played through the meta like from the very beginning to end once. And then, or sorry, not Soto, and then I guess also I'm thinking like Internios especially. I played through the meta like from beginning to end once. And then I never really felt any desire to go back to it. Right. It was a cool spectacle the first time. The environment, the ambience was really cool. It was pretty crazy. I mean, especially like when you go into it and you don't know what's going on, it does still feel very hectic. So that was really cool. But I just felt like, okay, I did it once. I guess I'm done now. Also, dude, my lighting is going crazy. It's because it's like the clouds are going back and forth in the background. So it's messing up the lighting, but whatever.
So I think it's really smart that they got a legendary spear coming. Like people said though, it's kind of sad it's not coming day 1. But it's like a legendary everybody actually will probably have use out of, right? I think one of the things with Soto for a lot of us like veteran players is that we didn't care as much about the legendary armor because we already have legendary armor, right? So it's like, oh, I already have that. I don't care too much about this like legendary armor grinds. But pretty much everybody probably wants a spear, right? Even if you already have an underwater legendary spear, you'll be able to use 2, right? Because you can use 1 for underwater and you can use 1 for on land. So even if you already have a legendary spear, you'll probably care about the new one as well.
I think that's actually like a benefit, I think, of everyone getting the same weapon. I know that some people would have liked other weapons too. I think that's fair. That's totally fine. I'm not disputing that opinion. But I think it's really cool that when that spear drops, it's like an item that every single player in the game is going to be interested in, right? That's kind of cool, like, because that's the MMO feel, right? Like everyone's going for it. I think that's a really exciting thing about a game is that I think we kind of had this with the raid legendary armor, right? Like, oh yeah, everyone wants to go get raid legendary armor. Let's go.
Oh, what if there's variants for the spear? Like each profession gets its own variant in follow-up patches. That would be so sick.
Yeah, that actually would be incredibly sick if you could have like one that was tailored to your profession. Not sure about that one, to be honest.
Because I mean, the skills have their own they have their own effects. Like the ranger spear skills have like their own like effects. Like if you have the legendary variant, it can like make those skill effects even cooler. Like that's just something they gotta do.
Chelsea working overtime right now,
sweating bullets. Yep.
Yeah. We've ruined it now. We're raising the expectations too much.
Yep.
We're sabotaging the expansion intentionally. We love to see that. It's going to be good. Yeah, I think that the replayability is like a really big point. I kind of touched on this, I guess, at the very start of the show actually. But yeah, the open world needs to be good. It has to be good. I want to be going back to that meta every single day for at least like the first month of the expansion. That's it. Right? I want to get in there with the guild. I want to blast. I want it to have coordination checks. It doesn't have to be hard. I'm expecting Dragon's End. Although that would be nice, wouldn't it? But I want to get in there. I want to blast. I want to do subgroups. Okay? I want to feel motivated to actually put some effort into the open world. It's one of the reasons why I'm actually incredibly excited for the raid, actually, to immediately re-rail back onto raids. Oh, yeah. But it's for a good reason, though, because I am loving the idea of the open world raid, because for me, it's actually the best of both worlds. I get to do a raid, blast with the gang, big DPS, love to see it, get the challenge mode, get the legendary mode, very exciting. But also, I can play with more than 10 people. That is exciting. I like that.
Meaning you can sell slots
exactly.
to your viewers.
Yes, I can. Yes.
Oh, if you want into my 50-man raid instance with people that can actually finish it and do DPS and proper subgroups, yeah, you're gonna have to pay.
I mean that happened on NA. Like what on Dragon's End, people were offering me like hundreds of dollars to get into my dragon. I'm not joking it. They were begging me to come and save them on the NA server. They felt there was no hope. Some people were saying, I have been trying this for 20 hours straight. We have failed every time. Please help NA. I will pay you. And that's what I want to happen in JANTHIR Wilds.
Side quest. Will the open world version give a legendary insight? Yes or no?
I don't think so. I think they'll probably limit the rewards, similar to like how the EOD like normal ones, right? Like don't give you an LI, but once you turn on CM, it does give you an LI. I imagine there will be some sort of toggle for it.
It gives you one if you do them all, like the weekly.
Oh, that's true.
EOD. Yeah,
that's
maybe
true.
something like that. Like you get
maybe
one
if you do it a
the whole
certain
thing.
number of times a week, or I don't know. Or maybe like the first time. But yeah, I'm especially excited. I know like the open world one is like the big hype, but personally, I am really excited for LCM. For those that don't know, for basically since Sarah's CM release, I have been in the LCM encounter on average 4 to 5 hours every single day. I'm on my 4th group right now that I'm running through, basically from scratch. So I've been kind of addicted to the encounter. I think if the LCMs are really fun with the raids, I'm going to go back in there and I'm not going to come back out. So, yep.
Yeah, Sarah's LCM was like my highlight of this expansion as well. Highlight of Soda. So the fact that like there's going to be, I assume that 3 bosses will have LCM now, right? That's kind of massive, I feel.
Yes.
I think it's so smart though, because like, you know, we've been on this podcast for like years being like, they need to make raids easy mode, right? Like raid story mode. They need to make it accessible. But I think this is way smarter, right? Because this plays to like the strength of Guild Wars 2, right? That's big open world meta thing, you know, where you get 50 people and you take on like bosses and stuff. It fits perfectly. And I think it will do a fantastic job at getting people sort of familiar, right? You know, people that want to just like experience the cool boss design, the music, they'll get to do that in open world now. And like maybe players will feel like, oh, I kind of understand the mechanics a bit, and then they feel a bit tempted to try out the normal modes, right? And then maybe they'll try the normal modes and be like, oh, I've done this a little, I should try out the challenge mode. I should try out legendary modes. And you know how strikes were originally supposed to be like this ramp up to raids? Kind of worked out. It got some people into instance content, but like it's different fights, right? Like just because you've done Whisper of Jormag doesn't mean you're suddenly gonna be confident doing Veil Guardian. Maybe a bit, right? But like it hasn't been a perfect ramp. But this time there's like this proper ramp, right? It's like you have the open world, then you try normal mode, then you try challenge mode. I think it's ridiculously smart. But yeah.
And the best part of story mode is it doesn't matter if it's a ramp or not, because as long as people are engaging with the open world version, it subsidizes the creation of all the other versions. So even if they don't matriculate up, it's still a win to have.
Yes.
The ramp
subsidize it.
The ramp has never worked, and it will never work. It doesn't work in any other game, not really. In general, players get to the point where they feel comfortable, that's where they stay. And I think that's actually good. I think it's not good when players kind of feel forced to actually do content that they don't really want to do. I think that, you know, obviously if you have difficulty settings, it does, you know, it allows players to kind of climb the ladder, something that has been a problem in Guild Wars 2. I'm being slightly hyperbolic, of course, but I think that when you only release the amount of content that ArenaNet releases, especially when it's cross expansion and it's kind of weird, like think about the ramp. Like where do you actually start? Like you start in Icebrood Saga, okay, and then maybe you go and do normal mode strikes, then you go and do normal mode raids, which is back in HOT. Then you've got the Path of Fire raids, and you can do the CMs. It's an incredibly convoluted mess. The entire idea of the ramp was kind of insane, I think. Doesn't make sense. ArenaNet, basically, look, I'm not gonna lie. ArenaNet really wanted to be different on this, even back in the Fractal CM days. They said, oh, we don't want to divide the player base. Like, look, here's the reality, guys. Other MMOs, especially the Forbidden game, World of Warcraft, they actually have some good ideas. Being the anti-WoW is actually sometimes a really bad idea, as it essentially meant that raiding in Guild Wars 2 was dead on arrival. Pretty much, and has been for the entirety of the game. Better late than never. 10 years later, we are now copying World of Warcraft with 4 difficulty settings, and it will probably work, I think, because it is a very good implementation. I think the open world integration, I completely agree with Lara, it very much plays into the Guild Wars 2 thing. It's a great double dip as well, because it means that you can essentially use the raid as an open world map. Funnily enough, by the way, that's also something that WoW does. Did that before Guild Wars 2 did, but that's another thing. I'm just being an asshole now. But yeah, good idea, and we finally caught up. Love to see it.
I do actually kind of believe in the ramp. I'll actually challenge you on that a little bit. There's now a debate TeaTime. Nah, well, I mean, I see what you mean though. I do think that it's not okay for people to get to their difficulty where they want to be, right? Not everybody has to climb up for sure. I 100% do agree with that. But I do think that there's players who want to get into certain content. They're like, I would love to do something like a challenge mode, but it's people can be a little bit intimidated into that. And I think that's where this new raid can really help out, right? Where people are like, well, I've already played that mode. Now I feel a little bit more comfortable, maybe making a group, seeking out a group for the instance mode. And maybe now my group feels ready to try challenge mode. So I think you can sort of call that a ramp. I do see what you mean though. But
well, no, when I was talking about the ramp, I meant each individual boss is a step on the ramp. Of course, I difficulty settings 100% work, right? Like that, that allows you to climb. But each individual boss, no, that doesn't work because it's isolated to an expansion. It just makes the entire thing incredibly convoluted. And also, you end up essentially making content divide your content essentially. Instead of making 4 bosses that work for everyone, you basically make one boss that works for one group of players, one boss that works for another, and then one boss that works for another, another on top of that, right? And I think that just means you end up with way less content. It just doesn't hold people enough. If you're only releasing one boss at kind of a moderate difficulty for kind of your mid-core players, and then the other one is oh well, it's a ramp, it's for hardcore players. Well, great news. Your mid-core now aren't really gonna they're not gonna do Serra CM. Okay, this was a big problem with Soto, I feel like. If you're a mid-core player, let's say you do raid CMs weekly, you do tier 4 fractals daily, right? The difference between that and Ceres is quite high. To be honest, it's going to be rough to make that jump up, in my opinion. So that's why difficulty settings are the way to go. We love to see.
Yes, for sure. I agree.
I'm still really holding out hope that they go back to the old raid wings and then add difficulties there too. That would be actually insane.
I mean, I completely agree.
For wings 1 through 3, really, if they wanted to be simple, they could just add HP and call them challenge modes, because almost all of those raids in rings 1 through 3, almost all of those bosses are so power crept that if you just returned them to their original launch difficulty, that would be hard enough for most players. So just whatever the average DPS was at Veil Guardian at launch, raise the HP so that it's relatively, or maybe even harder. But that would be enough. Actually making people have to move Veil Guardian and actually have to do the greens, that would be enough to make it an interesting fight.
They actually, I just realized this, but in Lonely Tower, how you fight demos? I guess they actually had somebody go into the old Deimos code and then take that boss and the mechanics and put it somewhere else, right? So
Yeah. It's a
I
bit
guess there's
scuffed.
some willingness to
To
like
be
touch
honest.
that old stuff. It is. I don't disagree. But at least there's some willingness to touch the old stuff and like, place it somewhere else and tweak it. So
Yeah.
who knows? I do think this is one of those things though, like when they were doing strikes with End of Dragons, and we were all like, oh, it was so cool if they do a Zaytan strike and a Balthazar strike and a Joko strike, and we all thought that was like a really sick idea, and then it never happened because I assume just because they didn't really have the bandwidth to do it. I think that might be one of these things here, right?
Well,
Like,
yeah, I think this is where it gets really problematic.
Strikes
because
are dead.
it's just kind of a zero-sum game, isn't it? Like, if they go back and rework, let's say they want to go and do Wing 1 CM, right? Or they want to turn Wing 1 into an open world raid, which, holy shit, oh my god, that'd be so good. But if they did that, what are they doing for the next expansion? And I don't think this is not like I want to be very clear here, actually. This is not a downside that is unique to ArenaNet, right? But with any MMO model that has this kind of expansion structure, this is exactly the same in every other MMO, including WoW and 14, by the way. They are constantly making the new thing. And look,
Yeah.
Here's the thing, guys. A little secret for you. They're already doing the next expansion. I'm not talking about JANTHIR. I'm talking about the one after, yeah? They're already doing that in terms of development. Like, that's, again, they haven't confirmed that, but if you use your brain, you'll realize they are. We know they develop really far in the future like this. We know they're going to be doing the... Actually, wait, did they say they would do it? They probably did, actually. Never mind, I'm trolling. But anyway, like, if they go back and do an update to an old raid, that's going to come at direct expense of the newer content, right? And at the end of the day, would going back and updating old content be really nice? But also, so is having an entirely new, like, fresh boss to experience, right? Like, it would be nice to have this, but I'm just not sure how it fits into the development cycle, especially because we had that rant earlier about they seem to really struggle to go back and update old content. They seem to be able to do systems and update systems with the core systems team, but I'm not sure if they have like a core content team where they can go back and fix it. Especially seeing as it's probably less financially lucrative as well compared to just adding new stuff to the game.
I think the dream would be that this new raid is like so successful and like everybody loves it and everybody's running the open world version all the time. And then, they can warrant like, I guess, like putting more money behind the encounters team, getting more people in there. But again, it's not just a matter of like more people, right? Like they probably need it. This is a difficult skill set to find, I imagine, right? Like being able to like, first of all, like design interesting encounters, but then secondly, also like within, the framework of Guild Wars 2. I feel like it's difficult to find people who can do that stuff, but I guess that's sort of the dream in the end. Just hope that, that there could be a bigger and bigger team eventually if this raid ends up being successful.
It's such a genius stroke too to have, like, again, the fact that the raid with the open world version is launching in its own patch with no like new map, because it means everyone will be doing it because that's the only thing essentially we're getting. So all the the people that are like that get anxiety about like instance content will be giving that a try because it's open world and they have nothing else to do. They don't have a way to dodge it.
I also think it's really smart that the open world map gets split into 2 instead of into 3, right? I do think that's one of the things with Nios was definitely like Nios fatigue a little bit, right? It's like, oh, we're going to Nios again. So like I think that will also just help the patches feel a lot better. That it's not like the same map 3 times in a row, but instead it's the next 2 patches.
And you can have one map that kind of has like a slightly different biome. Like one could be more swampy and like ground level, and the next one could be like more like hill country. So it won't feel so samey 3 maps in a row.
Yeah.
Oh, just in general.
I think it means that the event structure of the map is going to be a lot better as well. Like I feel like the main issue at Nios is that you have like these 3 metas going on, and that it's not on a timer. and you have to do both of the first two to do the third, and it means that none of them are actually super fleshed out. So I think like breaking into 3 like really disrupted the structure of the content in a pretty negative way. Whereas I think if you look at something like Drizzlewood Coast, that's a much more cohesive update, right? Like the North and the South meta, you know, whether you like them or not, they work together much meta. They are much better narratively, I think, with the way they connect and in terms of the gameplay as well. Even though it does end up getting pretty fucking long, to be honest. But they, you know, they probably wouldn't do that again.
I'm also just really happy that we're like back on the ground again. You know, like we spent the past year being on islands in the sky, which is kind of cool. But I'm glad that like, you know, we're back in like a sprawling landscape. I actually think that the new map that we've gotten to see in the trailer looks really cool. It looks a bit like Iceland or like Norway or something, right? It feels very Skyrim. It feels very grounded. It feels good to like have some change, you know, just after like all the Soda stuff to be. It almost feels a bit Path of Fire like to me. You know,
I do like a
big
green
open
expansion.
map.
I do.
Yeah.
Green expansion, snow expansion is high tier. There we go.
Yeah, it's a Canadian expansion. That's what we're getting.
I think it actually,
Including the
I think it actually
bears.
is based on
Yeah.
Iceland. Actually, that's I think I saw a tweet about that. It's
Ooh, that
inspired
means
by
it'll be like a
some,
volcano segment.
yeah,
then,
Icelandic
hopefully.
landscapes have inspired the expansion. Very exciting.
Hopefully Bjork makes a appearance if it's very Iceland based.
Hmm.
One of the bears can be called Bjork or some variation of that. That'd be great.
Bears. Dwarf
All right,
expansion.
let's go to the spears.
Yeah,
I
let's
was
go.
gonna
That's a
say,
good point,
that's a good
actually.
Time
talk about
to
the spears.
flame Trig.
Oh, really?
Incredibly hard.
Oh, wow. Okay. I mean, do it. Unleash. He's here in
the
the chat.
spears
He's
look
listening.
great, except for whatever ones Trig designed. Those are terrible.
Wow. We appreciate you, Trig.
I mean, that's pretty harsh. That's
I'm not sure which one he had a hand in, but that's the worst one.
I believe
Yep.
it was Ranger this time
Yeah.
around.
Well, of course, the noobs are attracted to the pet classes. What can you say?
Yeah, I think Trig is a Ranger main, in fact. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited for spears just because I don't know. I feel like the potential of a two-hand weapon is really interesting, right? Because I feel like two-hand weapons, the big thing is like they have to be better than like your potential offhand options, right? So like the example I always use is like Mesmer offhand, right? So Mesmer offhands are extremely powerful, but then like when Rifle came out, Rifle kind of like blew it all out of the water, especially when it came to healing. So I'm kind of excited to see where they're going with the spears, kind of like what niches they fit into in the game.
Yeah.
They seem. I'll give them so much credit. These spear, like the 3 that they've shown, are like way higher effort than what I expected. Like they have like a coherent, like you can almost see the sort of build. Like it's a much more top down development where they're like, this is how we want it to play, and this is and it has like a strong vibe. It's not just like. It's not like Warrior Staff where it's like here's 5 skills that each do a thing and aren't really flowy with each other and aren't coherent, but you have 5 tools that you can have. Whereas these spears look like the ArenaNet made a build and is like here's the build and enjoy it, and I dig that much more.
I like that they feel really fresh, you know, just with like the new animations and stuff, right? It doesn't feel like, oh yeah, it's like a bunch of like pistol animations that we've seen a million times. Like there's all the cool jumping animations and spinning the spear around and stuff. And again, I actually personally like that they're two-handed. I've seen some people be like, wow, I wanted them to be one-handed so I could have a spear and a shield. And I do get that. But I just like having 5 new skills, right? I like having a whole new skill bar to mess around with. You know what's one concern I have, actually? Yeah, it's like a thing. No, I'm sure it will be fine, but I have a big request. You know, like it does feel like ArenaNet is listening to a lot of stuff we want. So I'm on a like a I'm on a rampage.
As long as they listen
about the
to
stuff I
us
want.
and not people with bad opinions.
Wow. No, but like, so for example, we got to see the Necro Spear. And the Necro Spear seems kind of cool. You build up these sort of like, I don't know what they're called again, but you build up sort of these buffs It's almost a bit like Virtuoso.
Orbs. Everything's an
you
orb.
you build up these orbs, and then you get to spend them, and you can use them for all kinds of like interesting stuff. And like it looks really cool. It looks really interesting. It reminds me a lot of Virtuoso actually, where you're sort of building up your blades, right? And then you get to spend them and stuff. I wish that these new weapons, because some of these new weapons almost feel like elite specs, right? They got a whole interesting mechanic. They got like a whole thing you gotta play around. I wish weapons could have UI. Like that is such a thing. Again, like on Necrospear, you're getting like these what's it called? These sort of stacks, right? And then you get to spend them. So again, it feels a bit like Virtuoso. You get the stacks once you have 6 or 5 stacks or something. You use a certain skill. I think that this was a bit painful on some of the Soto weapons. On like the Ellie pistol, you had these bullets that you got. And then you got like these really tiny little buff icons on your buff bar, right? And there's a million other buff icons. So it's really hard to keep track in the middle of combat of like, do I have a bullet? Which bullet do I have? Can I spend it now? So that's the one thing I'm a little bit scared of. Like, I want to be able to clearly see like, oh, now I got 6 necro stacks. Now I gotta press this button. Or with the Guardian Spear, like you'll be able to sort of go get the illuminated versions or something. Like I want to be able to see when I'm doing that, right? I don't want it to be like a tiny little buff icon that is really hard to see in the middle of combat. I want like a really clear, nice UI telling me like, yes, now you are using the illuminated skills and you can combo them into other illuminated skills. Because the weapon designs sound really cool. Like Guardian is like comboing skills into each other, and like Ranger is like getting a whole like stealth bar kind of. Like the weapons seem really awesome. I just hope that these mechanics actually like feel. I want it to feel like I'm actually playing them, and I'm not just kind of like winging it while not really knowing what's going on. So I wish that these weapons, just like elite specs, could show me in the UI like a little indicator, like you have this many stacks, you're illuminated now. And you know that's not really a thing right now. Weapons can't really affect your UI. The one thing they can do is put the tiny little buff icons. And I think that boon bar, it's way too cluttered, it's way too small, it's way too difficult to see in the middle of combat. I want weapon-specific UI. I'm not expecting it for this expansion, but really that's like one of the things that I think if they're gonna keep doing weapons for each expansion, I think that would be really helpful, and it could make the weapons a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, I think if anything, it's just a commentary on like the buff bar in general. It's just very cluttered. I think like maybe I say it's easy in theory. I don't know how it is in implementation, but they could just make more lines, right? Like right now you have one line specifically for boons, and then you have another line for all of like the utilities and consumables. I think even if they split the like utility bar into like, let's say you have one line with consumables with like your guild hero or guild hero buffs and like your food and utility, and then another line was only for profession based skills or traits or something like that alone I think would make a very big difference. And I think I mean like another thing is I feel like the boons move around a lot, right? It's like when you apply new boons and stuff, they kind of like jiggle all over the place and they don't really have a static place. I feel like it would be nice if instead of, let's say, like putting it at the front and then causing everything else to need to move over to the right? Instead, like basically put it at the end, right? So that way it's like whatever you had first was on your bar first, and then it doesn't move. And then everything else kind of comes in behind that. But again, I feel like this is kind of going into the whole like QOL updates. And at the end of the day, I feel like they've been doing really great with QOL, but it doesn't generate them money, right? So it's like if they invested time into fixing this old legacy system, as Teapot said, it's taking money away from potential new features that we get in future expansions. But I do agree. I do think that the buff bar is very painful. And I think it actually is maybe a bit of a commentary on what I've seen in like my training raids and stuff. People tend to suffer from having their eyes glued to their skill bar the entire time, right? So they're not actually looking at the mechanics that are happening. And as a result, you see a lot of failed mechanics, or you have people that like, struggle with like essentially information overload, right? It's like you're trying to watch for all of these things. You're trying to remember your rotation. And then at the same time, the boss is like hurling all this stuff at you. It just feels very, I guess, overwhelming for new players.
I actually think that adding some kind of modular UI system would be probably one of the best core system updates they could possibly do. I think this is a huge issue when it comes to players learning the game. I think, not just because of weapons that have these mechanics. I definitely agree with Lara. I think Lara's right here as well, is that if we're adding these kind of builder-spender mechanics, and that's going to be an important part of the gameplay, then making that accessible to the user, I think is really important, so that players are able to connect with them and understand how to play around them. But just as a general point, I think that's, 100%. I would love to see that at some point. I'm not saying add add-on support. I think that's probably unnecessary for the type of improvement that we're looking at here. Although, kind of an implicit allowing of something like Guild Wars 2 Clarity, I think would actually be nice, because that is, I know a lot of players have found that very, very useful, actually. To be clear, all that does is it lets you move your, it lets you display your boons any way you want. That's all that add-on does, by the way, just to be clear. But yeah, stuff like that I think is really useful. But I think that will be one of the best things, because the barrier to entry is huge here. And I want to talk about this. A lot of things in Guild Wars 2 are what I would call the wrong kind of difficult. It's very, very hard for new players, but relatively trivial for experienced players. That is the worst form of difficulty possible, because all that does is it makes the skill floor, or rather, the entry point to skill way harder. Like, the learning curve for Guild Wars 2 is massive at the start, and a huge amount of it is the wrong kind of difficult. It's things that you have to just grind and get used to. Tracking boons, glancing down, looking at your target, looking up to the top of the screen to see what boons the target has, looking down to see what conditions that you have, tracking all of your cooldowns simultaneously and all of your buffs, even looking at your endurance, like, do I have a dodge available? All of these things are the wrong kind of difficult. And this is, there's other things in this in Guild Wars 2 as well. Let's not talk about the fact that enabling fast targeting and retargeting is insanely broken. Stuff like it is very, very overpowered, actually, as it turns out. And a couple of in-game settings like drastically change how abilities work. Again, that's the wrong kind of difficult as well. Addressing these things, I think, is huge for new players, especially when it comes to learning the game. And that obviously feeds into players getting into more content as well, right? Like, if players are really kind of battling against the UI, they're going to have a way harder time if they're trying to learn something like a raid, like Emmy was talking about, or getting into PvP, or getting into World vs. World. Also, we do need to re-rail, though, because we talked about that. Lara, I can't believe you derailed the TeaTime. Look at Trig. He's literally crying right now. Do you not see him? He's actually in tears.
Yeah. It's tangentially related to the spears.
He was so excited for us to talk about spears, and you derail immediately.
No,
I can't believe
you can bring it back on.
Did ArenaNet intentionally pick the 3 lamest professions to start with? Like, the 3 noob classes?
The Guardian one looks pretty cool, though. Do you not see that?
I mean, they all look cool, but, like, Guardian is, like, horrible. Like, come on. What are people thinking? Like,
yeah.
Ranger mains, Guardian mains, Necro mains? Oh, my God. It's like the clown show is going first. Like, really weird.
I don't know if you guys brought this up when I was lowering the blinds and all, but something I'm very excited to see is potentially more ranged options for classes that are almost entirely melee right now, right? It's like, I mean, it's definitely no secret that in the past couple of encounters, it's been heavily range favored, right? That's why you see a lot of Condi Virtuosos, you see a lot of Scourges and that kind of stuff. And it's not even like the class itself. Any class in this case that has ranged options with a lot of utility would have been the best for progressing. It just so happened that it was pink class this time. So seeing a lot of the ranged animations on these spears, even the fact that they're modular, right? It's like you're able to do one thing at range and then you do a different thing at melee. I think that is going to be really interesting for, I don't know, I think just like meta shakeups. I think it'll be really nice to see, for example, I'm thinking like the poor Bladesworns right now, like their class mechanic, you literally can't go outside, like, what is it, 150 range? So that means on fights like Ceres or anything else where you need like the target to go away, or if you need to spread out for mechanics, it's really difficult to play unless you're really, really good at greeting out every single last bit of damage that you can do. So I'm really excited for that.
The weapons, they look cool. I really like that's auto attack you mentioned. Like, it's like a ranged, but then if you go into melee range, it becomes like a melee auto attack. I think that's so cool. It feels really high effort and really like a new sort of play style. Again, every single one of these weapons has got its own like interesting mechanic and stuff. I am really excited to like see more of them. I like the way they're revealing it as well, actually. Like, they're sort of doing, it seems to be 3 at a time. Probably next week we'll get another 3.
Some cool videos.
Yeah. It feels like the videos are well edited too.
Yeah, I do think the quality of the trailers has been much higher
Yeah,
recently.
I
I feel
agree.
like, yeah, I'm like thinking back to like the Soto like previews of the weapons. A lot of the times they would just have like a stationary camera on like a character doing like an attack. But this time they added like, like the camera panning, they had different angles of the
Yes.
skills. They like kind of like mess with slow-mo a little bit so you could see the individual animations. You could even see like death animations from like enemies and stuff. I don't know. I guess like maybe just like the production quality, I think especially since they've been teasing all of this new stuff has gone through the roof. I mean, let's talk about that logo, right? The animation
Pretty
for the
cool.
logo.
The spear. The rivets. Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, I'm actually really impressed by the spears so far, though, actually. I definitely echo the sentiments that the gamers have here. I think they took a lot of the feedback they got in Soto. They've definitely gone all out, right? Like they're going big on the effects and making them look really cool, have some cool custom animations, all that sort of thing. Certainly a lot of creativity. Loving the melee and range double auto attack there. That's apparently coming on another profession too, which is actually really exciting. Looking forward to that one as well. I think, yeah, two-handed weapons are really good for this, because it really allows them to build a proper theme and, again, give it that almost elite specialization feel. Like, it looks like they're almost doubling up on the skill count, right? Like, each of these skills almost has a second mode to it as well. Like, with the Ranger, the Stealth changing 2 to 5. That's going to make the Thieves very jealous, I think. The Necromancer has loads of ways to reset its abilities. That's kind of another spin on having that profession mechanic into play there. With Shroud resetting the teleport resetting the perforate poke ability. That's going to be a lot of fun to play with. I think, and of course, the Guardian illumination stuff. Big fan of having these themed weapons. I feel the same about the trait lines too. I think one thing that we've seen when they rework trait lines is they build them around a mechanic, like Soldier's Focus with the Tactics trait line. And of course you have Invoke Torment, for example, with the Corruption trait line on Rev. I think that's really exciting, like almost making them a little mini elite spec in their own way. Having that mechanic that you play around, I think is good. I also think that type of design is really intuitive, which is something that Nike was talking about, having that slightly top-down design with that kind of build spender mechanic that is very common in other video games. We don't need to name them. Like that, I think is really intuitive. 4. I think it's really good for players to learn the game. I think it's fun to use as well. Like it's very satisfying. I think to, like, build up your combo, then unleash it on your target.
The only thing that's weird is that, like, okay, I'm playing Spear Untamed. It feels like a whole new elite spec. I'm doing crazy shit. It feels like a whole new build. And then my stuff's on cooldown, so I swapped my other weapon set, and now I'm back to, like, Vanilla Jones. It just feels like you're getting, like... It feels like we're only getting half of the story right now. And when we have, like, another weapon in this design philosophy down the road... Then we'll have, like, 2 weapons like this that we can, like, swap, that are, like, well-designed and modern that we can swap to, instead of having to, like, swap to, like, our lame set.
Well, I think their long-term goal would probably be to eventually make all weapons more similar to the new ones, rather than to
They're going to need at least 3 Roys for that.
Well, I mean, look, maybe they need to hire some more Roys then. But I mean, you kind of see this a little bit with like how Hammer works on Warrior, right? Like with the combo, and actually all the Hammer weapons kind of work this way, right? With how Guardian works too, with like the Banish Mighty Blow combo that allows you to teleport onto the target. I think we see a couple of elements of that design starting to creep into the other weapons. I certainly wouldn't be surprised if very slowly, and don't get me wrong, yeah, it will take them a long time to do this because, there's a lot of weapons in the game. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we actually do see a gradual movement towards a lot of weapons actually kind of sharing a similar design philosophy. Maybe not quite to the same extent, not as flashy as, oh yeah, every single skill changes when you go in stealth. But certainly having that kind of similar playstyle where the abilities have this interplay, where there are kind of baked-in combos to how the weapon actually works, which I'm personally a really big fan of. I think that type of design is really good, not only for players understanding the game, but also I think it's fun to play as well, just inherently.
It is good.
Yeah. I like it. I like the spears. Two-handed weapon hype. Let's go. And look, you know what? We've kind of given our basic takes on all that stuff, I guess. But we might as well do a little bit of of speculation here, because as Emmy was talking about, like, ranged options are definitely kind of like the name of the game, I think, for a lot of these. And I think there's also some discussion about the fact that melee builds in general just... It turns out that all the ranged builds in the game also have giga utility and are really tanky. That's probably not good. So I think there's a broader balance issue there. But on the kind of the ranged issue, are ArenaNet going to troll and make Ellie Spear melee? I personally would love to see that. I would probably be entertained for at least the whole day if they do that. I do think it is going to be ranged, though. I will say that. It probably is going to be a
ranged, and you're locked into one attunement and can't swap.
Fire, I assume, right? I assume
fire is the only viable option. Yeah, you're basically, all the other attunements are gone. You only get fire when you have spear equipped.
Yeah.
And you can only be at 1500 range. If you come closer to the boss, then you can't even activate your skills. It tells you that you're too close. Like, you get a pop-up thing on your screen saying you're too close.
Yeah, back off.
Back away.
Minimum range.
Yeah, minimum range 1500.
But yeah, to kind of open this up, actually, and if anyone has any kind of like ideas or speculations, like, I think ArenaNet kind of want to fill some gaps in design. Maybe not everything. Like, I was kind of expecting a support weapon for Necro, because Necro doesn't really have a proper one yet. They went with like kind of a power DPS mobility weapon. But I think they probably are. They are pretty intent on filling gaps, like, you know, using staff to create support warrior, for example, is like I think a pretty solid example. Or giving you know, rifle to Mesmer, like, you know, a full-on support weapon that has very much enabled one of the strongest builds in the game now with Heal Chronomancer. And hell, you know, even Shortbow actually did kind of work out in the end for Engineer, at least in World versus World. And I think you probably play it in PvE as well. Or do you, actually? I don't know. I'm so out of the loop on, like, what you play on Heal Engie, because nobody plays that anymore. But, yeah, like, what gaps do we think are going to get filled with the new weapons coming up?
I think
are there even that many more
Warrior
gaps?
needs mid-ranged power.
Yeah.
It needs, like, a 600 range power build. So, obviously, a very Paragon-esque sort of build is what I envision. And there is a very interesting warrior spear build in Guild Wars 1 that's like a near meta build. That's actually has like an interesting mechanic of like recharging your skills when you hit a guy who's burning. It's pretty good.
Yeah. I don't want to call it a speculation, but more of an idea that I think would be really cool. What about hybrid damage? Right. So like right now, whenever you think of like power spec or power builds and everything, you spec almost entirely into power, precision, ferocity. When you think of Kandi, you go entirely into like, you know, condition damage, expertise. I feel like we don't see many hybrid options, right? So like I guess the most that you could see that is with celestial gear. Like some classes are able to take advantage of celestial gear really well.
Have you considered grieving?
Yeah, I feel like you're talking about the fabled grieving build, right? Like, isn't that what we're talking about?
So something like that, like, could be interesting. Like, I guess I'm thinking like this might be a bit of a weird reference, but like with TFT, you can kind of see like the damage distribution of like the damage types that you do. So what if like let's say like the overall damage was still the same, but then you're doing both power and Kandi stuff. So then essentially you're doing 50% Kandi, 50% power. I don't know. I can't say for sure if that would ever, or how to even like balance that kind of thing. But that is a niche that I feel like has not really been explored in Guild Wars 2 at all.
Yeah. There's
they
like hybrid
They tried to make Weaver
it's like kind of
a hybrid. And, you know, the problem is with the balance is that unless it's like absolutely perfect, it will lean slightly one way or the other. And then in which case you're better off going in that direction. There have been like a couple of times where grieving has actually been the optimal gear set, but it's been pretty rare. I do think one way they could do it is by having skills that had crit coefficients built in, so you didn't need to have ferocity on your gear. So you could take grieving, which doesn't have ferocity, and it's mostly like a Kandi
it does.
skill.
It does have ferocity though. It doesn't have expertise, right? It's expertise
right.
is what
Yeah. Or you go the other way where it's like, you know, it has like if this crits, the Kandi goes like 33% longer or something like that.
Yeah.
So
I guess
that,
that's like
so
kind
that
of more of what I was thinking.
you cheat your stats essentially if you use this weapon, and then you're more incentivized to play a hybrid.
Yeah. I think it would be very difficult to balance it. I know that there have been the existence of hybrid builds before, but definitely not nearly to the dominance, right? Of like basically pure power, pure condi, where you spec entire. When I say spec, I mean like specifically gear wise. Like you go almost entirely and you invest into condition damage expertise or power precision ferocity. So maybe something, I don't know. I was thinking of like the modular idea of like the spears. It's like you have some skills in melee, some skills in range. So what if like, I don't know, like when you're in melee, you do big hits with big red numbers, and then as you go range, you kind of like focus more on conditions. Again, I'm just some thought bubbles.
Well, I think this very much comes down to just. I think they can do this with the numbers. I don't think. I think when it comes to hybrid, I'm not sure if we should necessarily focus on the gear more so the balance themselves. I feel like Engineer in particular is like really infamous for this, right? Like when you play Condi Engie, especially, I think. I'm not sure how it is with Condi Mech, but certainly back in the day with like the old school Condi Engie builds, it was basically playing like a power build with extra steps that also applied Condis. There was actually like a very high power contribution to a lot of conditioned engineer builds. I think that's true of even Virtuoso now, right? I think it actually does like a decent chunk of its damage as power, even though it obviously like specs into like Rampager even and stuff like that, right? With the way that it actually plays out. So I think like these builds kind of do exist. I agree with you, they're uncommon, right? Like you end up with a Scourge, right? That, you know, basically just like very little power damage. But I think there are these builds that certainly can exist. I think you're right. I think they're an interesting type of build that do have that slightly more hybrid element to them. That can exist. I think it's really difficult to create like the build where grieving is good, because grieving, it has to be like exactly one condi a lot of the time, because you need to not really care about expertise that much or have like a huge amount from your gear and traits. And also you have to have high power contribution, which I think you're right. Like there definitely is. There's a low amount of weapons that kind of have a high power contribution and can be used as a condition damage source as well. So it would have to be. It would have to be a weapon that only applies a low amount of condis and also has good power contribution, and then we can finally create the fabled grieving build. It can finally exist. It can be birthed into the game at long last.
I wonder if range is something they'll go for big time. Because, you know, like so many of the recent encounters have been like so ranged favored, right? So you, like Emmy was saying, you see so many virtuosos and like scourges running around. And they don't really seem to be nerfing that, right? People have been sort of being like, oh, they're definitely gonna nerf virtuoso. People have been thinking that for like 2 years and it hasn't really happened. So I wonder if ArenaNet wants to get more classes up to that level where they've got like a similar, like really strong ranged option for these fights where range is so good.
There's a complexity here as well, though. It also comes down to encounter design. Like the problem that exists is that there are ways to kind of do the best of both worlds. A very simple example of this is Harvest Temple CM. Because there's baited AoEs, right, that you can basically allow your melee to get. I actually think there needs to be the other way around, by the way. A very common design principle in MMO encounter design is that you have some mechanics that only affect melee and some mechanics that only affect range players. Which you could do with proximity, right? You could just have it baited, or you could even have the game look at what weapon you're equipping, because the game knows what weapon you're equipping, right? That gets a little bit funky, because you could kind of abuse this in Guild Wars 1. Funnily enough, you could kind of trick the, you could trick NPCs into kind of not thinking you're a spellcaster, right? By using certain weapons, like using martial weapons. So you'd have to be a little clever with that. Like that wouldn't quite work. But look, okay, I'm not a game dev. Okay, like that's their job to figure that one out. Right, so I think there's some stuff that goes on there with the encounter design, but I also do think it is a utility issue, not just a DPS issue. A good example of this actually is Ceres. Like Ceres CM, like Virtuoso is not necessarily the best DPS build. In fact, you know, like if you're gonna speedrun Ceres or do like a decent kill time, you're gonna run Deadeye. Which is essentially a melee build, right? With the way Axe works on Thief right now. Like, yeah, that's what you're gonna run. Probably not all of them, to be fair. Like, you know, like it's 6 Deadeye Ceres, that'd be pretty based. Like, good luck killing the ads, I guess. But yeah, there are actually other options, and Nastin was talking about this in the chat. There are other options that actually do work. It just so happens that Virtuoso is both the easiest and probably like the safest as well, I think. And this is yeah, like this is a
why is that even on Virtuoso?
This is where the utility thing really comes into play, in my opinion. Like I actually want to re-rail this because again we've derailed. Who do I blame for this? I think I blame Lara again. She did it again.
I think you can.
Very badly behaved TeaTime guest.
I feel like I am setting up the derail, but you're the one doing it though.
Well,
like,
I am because you'll bring up interesting
things.
I'm taking the bait because you're saying interesting things. Okay, be less interesting. All right? Okay. That's what's going on here. But I think that's, you know, let's just derail that. We'll talk about this.
I want engineer ranged spear. Okay, that's what I want. Power ranged engineer. Yes, that's what I want.
Yeah. Let's kind of go through this. I want to re-rail. I'm going to start with Mesmer because I think Mesmer is the one that is actually I feel like this one is super glaringly obvious. Mesmer needs melee cleave. Yes? Or am I crazy on this? Like,
no.
That seems right.
Yeah, surely.
Pretty good, yeah.
Where is the melee AoE weapon for Mesmer? Doesn't exist. You're going to do sword auto attack? Please. 3 targets. Pathetic. Okay, no. That's what we need. We need melee, big... I want to be in the World vs. World Zerg. Mesmer. Cleaving with my spear. That is what I want to see. We've got the support weapon. We've got 1 billion combi weapons for Mesmer, and all of them are dagger. Enjoy. All of that kind of good stuff. That's what I'm talking about. That's what we need. Melee power spear on Mesmer.
Lots of spin to win sort of attacks.
Oh, yes! They give it Arc Divider. The triple one. Yes! They took it from Warriors.
They can make every skill like a version, like a dark version of another profession's skill. So you could actually call it like illusionary arc divider.
Yes.
And then they have like illusionary this, illusionary that. Yeah. So it's like you take like the coolest skill from every other profession and put it on their bar. That would be sick.
Yeah. I'd be a big fan of that. I do think that Ellie, I want to bring some comments on it. Ellie has to be ranged DPS.
For sure.
It has to be.
Yeah, I feel like Ellie is missing that, like, I guess, ranged caster, like, archetype, right? It's like you have staff a little bit, and there was that brief amount of time where staff Ellie... It was actually the first hardcore DPS build that I ever learned, where with like staff, and you had to count your fireballs before doing like another, like, I don't know, meteor shower or whatever. So that would be really cool.
Stealth Tempest. That was fun.
This is actually a slight complexity with Elementals, actually, when it comes to range builds. Like, Tempest and Catalyst actually are kind of baked in melee to an extent. With how the Jade Sphere works and how overloads work. So it would, like, if you're going to get a ranged Ellie build, it's probably going to end up being Weaver a lot of the time. Which, I mean, look, I actually think another really big component of this for Ellie, and this is a slight derail, I'm going to immediately re-rail, but Ellie needs a utility skill, significant buff or rework, I think, to kind of enable kind of the playstyle that a lot of players are looking for, and also kind of make it a little bit more robust in terms of how things work. If you look at classes that are good, they have very good core toolkits. Stuff like Mesmer is a really good example. The Mesmer core toolkit is absolutely sick, to be honest. It's probably the best in the game right now, I want to say, actually. I think, 100% it is, actually.
It's just the best class in the game.
Yeah.
Behind the times, I guess.
Mesmer deserves
to lead every other class except for Mesmer.
Very nice. Yeah, I mean, that's a Dark Emmy moment right there. Okay, Dark Emmy is unchained with all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think that would be... definitely the way to go. And that's actually, funny enough, to even further derail, I want more combat features. I want to see new core trait lines. I want to see new elite skills, new utility skills. There you go. That's how you fix the game.
Re-rail.
Re-rail spears. Who else? What other
Ellie
profession?
will get the ranged like ground. They said one of them to be like ground targeting or whatever. I think that's going to be Ellie.
Yeah,
it's going to have a lot of the ground targeting.
I want ranged power DPS on engineer.
Okay.
Like we have rifle, but I think the rifle's boring. I don't like rifle very much. And then like the I guess we had sword, right? I guess we had like the hammer, but that's been a while. That's a long time ago. Bellfire's a long time ago. And we just had a support weapon on a nice DPS weapon. And I don't want Condi because Condi NG is scary. So that's the only reason.
Wouldn't ranged Condi actually make them? I mean, I don't know. NG's weapons are surprisingly well rounded, right? Because you have rifle for ranged power theoretically. You have pistols for ranged Condi, but it's mid range, I suppose. And then in melee, you have sword and hammer for power DPS. You have short bow, which is a support weapon, and then you also have mace, which is kind of a hybrid, right? Like kind of a Condi support weapon hybrid thing. So NG almost like could be anything. To be honest, it could be. Who knows?
NG doesn't have a lot of gaps, right? That's what we're talking about, filling gaps. NG kind of does everything, I feel.
Yeah.
But I just like power DPS, so that's what I want.
Yeah, and they could certainly lean into like a full DPS ranged option, I think, because that's rifle's in kind of a weird spot. I think I feel it's almost a little bit like Elementalist Staff in that it's not exactly a utility-oriented weapon, but I feel like rifle is almost like a slightly PvP-oriented weapon. Like that's where that weapon typically crops up, is there, because of the way its kit worked. It's got like a lot of control, some mobility on it that's like really, really powerful with jump shot and so on. That's where it typically pops up. So they could definitely go for like a more kind of traditional artillery-style build. The entire kit is mortar kit. Enjoy that. Something like that could 100% work out.
Thief. I want heal spare on Thief.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Ooh.
I feel like Thief just heal. Thief is like the only class that doesn't really have a good heal build right now, right? Heal Spectre's kind of a thing, but it's not really a thing. Like you can kind of make it work, but it's like probably the worst healer we've got right now. I want heal Thief to be better. So like that would be cool. I want a support weapon on Thief.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. Like here's the thing though. Do you think they're a little bit unlikely to do support weapons in general? Like do they because I feel like it is I mean, maybe they can do some like hybrid stuff that's kind of like a DPS and a support, kind of what we saw with Guardian. But I feel like a lot of the weapons are going to be damage oriented, because I think that it's not that more players want that. It's just that I think a DPS weapon is going to feel like very impactful, I think, like as a player. Like if you're a player playing through the expansion, right? Like you're going through doing the story and stuff. Like a damage weapon is what I think is going to have a lot of impact. So I think we might see some support stuff. I think they're going to be pretty damage oriented overall.
Right.
That would be my guess anyway.
Yeah.
What do we think?
I see why you would say that. I do think that the Guardian one seems pretty supporty though. From reading the post, even though Guardian already has pretty good support weapons too. So yeah, I think you have a point, but I do think they might still be open to it.
Yeah, I feel like don't get me wrong. I love support weapons, right? Like I loved rifle for Mesmer and all, but I do think that it mostly impacts people that do organized group content, right? It's like when you're mostly playing by yourself story-wise, or if you're playing in open world, even in like big meta events, I feel like the emphasis on supports is significantly lower. But I mean, we could potentially see a change on that, right? Because I mean, it's like you guys said, we're getting the new open world raid, and that's going to be a major focus for like the first basic first quarter or whatever it's called of the expansion. So maybe we will see more emphasis on supports just as the community is kind of shuffled into more group content. But I think I don't know. I think the other really big thing is it's class archetypes, right? It's like I think when people hear Guardian, right, just like in a fantasy world setting, you kind of think more like support style stuff, right? It's like you got your tiny holy symbols and all that kind of stuff. And then when you think about Thief, you always think about like, oh, I'm like being stealthy, I'm stealing, I'm doing like damage, I like, do things kind of in a roundabout way. And I feel like a healing Thief kind of doesn't really quite fit that archetype, right? So I feel like even if it were really strong, like I mean, just in general, right? Like more casual players, like the vast majority of the player base are not going to be speed running EOS for Sarah CM, right? So it's like for those players, they're going to pick the one that they feel like is the most fun, like thematically or that kind of stuff. So I could see like a world though. Like I've always liked the idea of like shadow healing, right? So like,
Ooh.
that kind of stuff. That could be cool for Thief. But I do think, I mean, I'm basically in agreement. I think making a support weapon for like such a large expansion feature, even though it might be better for the game as a whole, would not be a great selling point for the actual players
Yeah.
themselves. So
I think there are other ways that you can kind of implement that as well, right? Because they could go back and change all the weapons potentially. Like they're trying to juice up Thief Scepter, right, to kind of make that work a little bit better in the support role. I think they could easily take like a Necromancer dagger and rework that into a support weapon, for example. Kind of make that happen. And also I think it can be done through traits as well. Yeah, like we've seen some really big improvements with Warrior, like with all the traits they're adding there for the support kit that's being added. I think there's even some more stuff coming actually next patch, right? I think for support Warrior, making that a little bit better. I think that like there's other ways to kind of implement that in a way that still makes the expansion feature like really, really hype. So yeah, I think you still do hybrid weapons, right? Like again, like with Guardian, but I'm definitely expecting them to be pretty big damage, big DPS, big pump, with some kind of useful things attached to them. As well.
Yeah, they made heal chrono a thing before they even got the rifle, right? Like heal chrono was
by
like
reworking inspiration and chaos trait lines. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and again, like Thief does kind of already have the whole heal specter thing. You're right. Maybe it makes more sense to sort of try to get that up to speed instead of changing the whole spear to be a healer weapon. Yeah, I think I agree.
Yeah. Is there anything else from the other professions that immediately sticks out as they 100% have to add it? One of the ones we haven't done yet. We haven't mentioned Rev. What Warrior, Nike? What are they cooking for Warrior? What's going on?
Like I said, mid-range, like 600 range power DPS, probably.
Okay.
You need something that you can just sit there and pew spears at you, throw them at you.
Yep.
Seems
3-hit arc divider on spear.
Why not? They'll do something cool. Like there'll be like maybe spears will have some ammo mechanic. Because if they're thrown spears, they'll have like an ammo mechanic.
Okay.
I think that could be cool. Like they'll do something creative with it. It won't just be like super vanilla.
There is one more thing I kind of want to talk about weapons before we go somewhere else. I guess we have to still talk about the Warclaw guys. That's gonna be hype. Is the there apparently there is a take on a Guild Wars 1 mechanic, and I thought that was so interesting. What do we think that is going to be? Nike, you are our resident Guild Wars 1 mechanics expert. What do you think they could possibly mean by that incredibly vague statement?
Yeah, it could be. I think hexes is the most likely thing.
So basically, unique debuffs that you can apply.
Yeah. Or maybe like even punishment sort of things. Like I know that they don't want to have another confusion, but
okay. I was thinking something like doing damage from elevation does more damage or something. So like if you're in PvP and you're like on the high ground, you like spear them and they take more damage.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I could see
pious renewal.
Yeah. Trigger's seen one person guess it correctly, but we have no idea who that is. I mean, I guess we'll find out pretty soon. It could be us. I mean, maybe Nike just guessed it correctly. It's possible. Know. We don't know. In that regard, we simply have no idea with that one. But I guess we'll find out very, very soon anyway. But yeah, I think the new weapons are actually pretty hype. Pretty damn hype. I'm really excited to see what there is next, and of course the live stream with our wonderful developers as they explain what the hell's going on with the new weapons. But yeah, I guess the only comment I would have on this is something that I mentioned earlier, is that I really like that the Spear is coming on launch, but maybe one day, maybe a couple of expansions down the line, we can actually see a point where on launch we get a cool new combat feature with a new weapon or something like that, and then boom, 2 updates later we get a new elite skill. Everyone gets a cool new elite skill, or everyone gets new utility skills. Oh my god. Think how good that would be. Let's go. But I mean, that might be a little bit too much with all the balance patches. But we'll see.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll get icons in the beta? How like the Soto beta weapons, they all had like the little construction icon, which I think actually made it a lot harder to like really learn those weapons during the beta. Do you think they'll have that yet?
I think they should be theoretically a lot further along in development, so I feel like yes.
Maybe.
That will be my expectation. Because I mean, it's releasing pretty soon. They better have the icons, right? You know, it's coming up.
I mean, it might still be finalizing stuff though, right? Like with Soto, the beta was pretty close to the release, and there were no icons in the beta.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I know. I guess we'll see.
Well, I mean, it doesn't matter. You know, like nothing wrong with the little man with the shovel, right? For every single skill.
Yeah, I do think it was a little bit confusing though, because I know there were a lot of skills that had like the double cast stuff, right? It's like you cast it once, and then after that you cast something else. I remember that being a little bit confusing. I was like, wait, which skill am I on right now? So
that's definitely true. That's definitely true with that one.
Weaver, all the dual skills, and just being like,
yeah. Okay. I guess actually is this the final topic? I feel like it is. We actually should talk about the mount a little bit. The expansion is Warclaw themed. I mean, comment. Any comment?
I think I was thinking about it earlier when you brought it up, right? Because like each mount kind of has its own niche, where you have like vertical traversal, horizontal traversal, and then kind of like diagonal or aerial traversal, that kind of thing. So I was trying to think like where Warclaw would kind of fit into this, because at this point we've kind of covered all of the niches, right? We even have like multiplayer mounts and stuff. So given that we know it's going to be a single person, and did they confirm like exactly what the ability is? I forget.
Not yet. No, they're reworking them though. They said that they're reworking. It has a double jump, right? It can do that.
Yeah, yeah. I think I heard the double jump thing. So I was thinking like it could essentially be Sky Scale except faster on land, right? Because like Sky Scale, even though you have like the double dash and you have like the vertical traversal,
maybe
or
it's Sky Scale
but
faster vertically, because Sky Scale,
yeah,
it's kind of. You can go vertically. It's really good at it, but it's kind of slow, and you need to stop and rebuild your on ledges and rebuild your energy. Whereas if Warclaw can just scale up the side of a wall, if you can just
double jump really fast, or if you maybe if it has like raptor speed or something, or maybe not quite raptor speed, right? We already know how fast it goes, but I mean, Warclaw running on land without using any abilities is already faster than Sky Scale, so something like that could be interesting. Maybe something also more combat oriented, like Lara mentioned earlier. It's like in Wolver's World, you can dismount other people, right? But obviously
your
can't.
Sky Scale can sniff loot, so if it sniffs a mob,
cool, actually, right?
And like the mob, like it can sniff a mob, and the mob starts glowing, and then if you then kill the mob while it has the sniff debuff, you get like bonus loot from it.
What if it could like reveal treasure chests though and stuff? Like, you know, like the little hidden chests that could be everywhere. Yeah, and you could like sniff them out, and you could use it to hunt for treasure in the wilds.
I find that a bit weird though, right? Because it's essentially reusing functionality, right? It's like if you do that, then I feel like the JADEBot module, I mean, I don't think many people ran it anyways, but it would trivialize it even more. But yeah, I think now that I think about it, I think the combat capabilities could be really interesting, because like Warclaw, I mean, by nature in Wolver's World is supposed to be a combat oriented mount. So something like that could be cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I just hope they don't design the meta around it.
ArenaNet with our spears.
Learn your lesson, ArenaNet. Learn your lesson, ArenaNet. I do not want to see the end. I don't want to see Amnitus again. I don't want to spend half the time doing my fireball on the Sky Scale, okay, attacking a tentacle, or poking the boss's eyes out with the Sky Scale. Do not do this. Okay, let's just go through this. It was terrible in EOD, especially in the tunnel, the cleansing nuke. It was very bad there. Not fun. It was even worse, arguably, with the Sky Scale and Soto. Don't do it. Or have it as a very minor feature. If you want to have it, so we have to go on the Sky Scale and pull a gate down like in World vs. World, honestly, that's not bad. I'll take it. Decent roleplay. However, if I'm AFK spamming 2 to do the fireball for like 10 minutes, that is unacceptable. Okay, that's not fun. You know, actually, even on Dragon's End, it was quite good. I didn't mind breaking down the rocks on the side events. That's not bad, actually. Especially because you could, like, fly over the rocks, and you could, you know, use your turret cannon, okay, to destroy the rocks. I didn't hate that. But Soto wasn't good. Don't do that. I don't like mounted combat. Your combat system is good. Stop trying to pretend that it isn't, okay? Yeah, boom. There it is.
Unless they enable jousting with spear on your Warclaw, where you can...
that would be so
You
cool.
can open world duel people in PvP, but in PvE with joust. You can have jousts.
Yeah.
That would be sick. That's the alternative PvP game mode. It's open world dueling, but it's jousts.
Yeah.
Yep.
Aw.
We didn't even talk about that.
I just like that it's a cat and it looks cute, and
Yeah.
I like cats.
I think it definitely does make sense to give it a role in, especially in PvE. I'm a little bit trepidatious regarding the rework in World vs. World. I'm not a huge fan of mounts in World vs. whatsoever, but Roy actually assured me in Twitch chat that it'll be okay, and I trust Roy, my king. So we'll see how that one turns out. I'm sure we'll hear more. Yeah, I mean, personally, I wish I guess they'll get to it eventually. I want to see a beetle-themed expansion. Imagine every map in an expansion being designed around the roller beetle. Let's fucking go. Okay, that's what I'm talking about.
Badass,
that would be so cool. That's what I want to see. And they can just juice it up even further, like make it like even more of a special like drag racing thing, give it new masters and stuff. That could actually be really fun. Because I do think Arena has almost been selling themselves short. I feel like they've picked the two least fun mounts. In fact, no, the three mounts that we've had expansions based around, or kind of, features of, with the turtle, the sky scale, and the Warclaw. They're kind of the mounts that aren't that much fun. And I guess it's kind of the point. They're trying to make them fun, right? Is what they're going for, I guess. So I understand that. But yo, we've got the Griffin in this game. We've got the Roller Beetle. That, that's fire. Like, that's actually the hype mounts in Guild Wars 2. And I would almost say that they're a little bit scared about making expansions around those, because coincidentally they're also the hardest ones to use. That might actually be a part of it, or why they're a little bit, unsure about committing to those mounts. But I kind of wish they'd do it anyway. Like, they can make them easy to use. Easy. No problem. Like, how hard can it be?
Basically, gotta go fast, gotta go zoom.
Yeah, you have to zoom. Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see. And I guess actually the real final topic, I forgot about it in the same way that ArenaNet forgot to put it in their expansion feature list, is the new PvP game mode, which, to be fair, isn't going to be an expansion feature. But I do think it would be fair. This is one thing that I'm kind of in two minds on, because I feel like ArenaNet could actually be hyping their expansion as, boom, new PvP game mode. Because, yeah, it is technically a core feature, but it's kind of part of the release schedule, right? I don't know. Maybe a philosophical disagreement I have with ArenaNet. I feel like world restructuring actually is hype. That's a really hype thing that's happening this expansion, this year in Guild Wars 2. Like, same thing next week in Guild Wars 2. The last reset has dawned, Lara. It's over. There's no more. It's over. Yeah, it is over. Wait, you play on FSP?
I used to. I'm on Pike and Square now.
Oh my god. I don't think we can be friends anymore. That's actually crazy.
Fair.
Yeah, yeah. You should play on Maguma. I hear that's the actual good server.
Hell yeah.
I go to Maguma to PvP whenever I need gift for battle.
but anyway.
If your server loses to Maguma, it's because you are strictly inferior at player versus player combat.
But kind of on the PvP mode to kind of round out the show. I mean, Nike said earlier that this is the least likely thing. I actually agree. I think this is less likely than Wing 8. Truly the improbable expansion here, in my opinion. My expectation is they're going to simplify it. Conquest is hard, especially when the population's low. Then it doesn't play out super hot. And I think that this game mode is going to be to try to get new people to play. So I think it's going to be simple. I think it's going to be something like capture the flag. Actually, I think some of my viewers are talking about how they could do it. Apparently there's a game mode in Overwatch that could kind of work a little bit. That could kind of make sense in Guild Wars 2, like a kind of the team-based shooter style stuff, or like arena shooter style things could make some sense there as well. I think it's going to be very simple, like probably focused either around one objective, like one kind of core idea that the map has, rather than the kind of this rotational element. Very focused on fighting, very focused on, very focused on combat, right? And like, boom, smash into each other, press some buttons. That is my expectation for this. If I was a Guild Wars 2 dev, that is what I would do, is get people fighting. So essentially like a slightly more objective-oriented 3v3 and 2v2. Because people do like that, but it gets stale real fast because the game mode is a little bit too narrow and too strict, right?
I would love a King of the Hill.
That was another one.
Yeah.
Guild Wars 1, Hall of Heroes style, where you have one team controls the node and the other two teams team up against them. But then And so you have like the strategy of like, do you want to hold the node because you can't hold it against 2 teams? But if you wait to the last minute to try to capture it, you might not be able to capture it. Like that level of like meta strategy is so good.
Yeah.
I'm really interested because I've never really had that much interest in Guild Wars 2 PvP because my mindset with PvP games is like, if I wanted to play a PvP game, I'd go play like the games that are specifically designed and have like the entirety 100% of their budgets into PvP, right? Whereas like I feel like with Guild Wars 2, there's a lot of other stuff that I would rather be doing. So if this is a more, I guess, like new PvP player, like friendly game mode, I could see myself giving it a try, if only just to mess around with it. Maybe see like what rewards there are or that kind of stuff. But yeah, honestly, I'll be honest, I'm not the most hyped about it just because I think it's not really my niche. I don't really like playing against other players. It scares me. I'm scared of it. So yeah.
Unless it's in TFT, huh?
Yeah.
Boom. Yeah, no,
Imagine
yeah.
if they started.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, imagine if you got like cutscene finishers like in TFT. And
Yo, that would actually be pretty epic.
It'd be so stupid. Oh
But
God.
I mean, yeah, I think it's I think that's exactly what ArenaNet are going for. They're looking to look. The current PvP scene is unironically dead, and that's not. I hate that, to be honest. Like, I really am a big PvP enjoyer, big Conquest fan, but right now, PvP is dead, and it's only getting worse. It's been rotting and festering, despite the fact that, there are balance updates, despite the fact that, the game mode is kind of finished in a way. It's got ranked, it's got ATs, and I love the change they're making by adding the weekly ATs and twice a year Tournament of Legends. That's also really cool. Big fan of that. Reward changes coming up. Despite all of that, that isn't going to save PvE, and ArenaNet know that. They're not stupid. PvP needs new players getting into the game mode. And honestly, with the state of Conquest as it is right now, that's essentially impossible. The only way you could get new players into Conquest would be to basically start completely fresh and just ban anyone who's played PvP in like the last 5 years. Just because the scene is just too rotten, basically. Not in the sense of like corrupt, actually, just in the sense that it's just festering there, right? Like, it's just like the same people, and you queue into the same people every game. It's like the people who play have been playing for years and years and years, and they just like obliterate anyone who comes into the game, pretty much. There's this classic story, this guy came into my chat and said, hi, I've just played my first ever game of ranked. I queued into Naru, who's rank 1 on the leaderboard. Is that normal? And I had to tell this poor guy, yes, that is normal, and that will continue to happen. And not a super fun experience for a new player. And yeah, essentially Conquest, as it stands right now, it will not get better. It is not going to improve, just purely because the population is kind of in a bit of a death spiral. The only new players who make it into PvP are basically the 0.1% of people who have got the spine and like the mental resilience to get crushed over and over again before they eventually learn, which, understandably is not an experience that many people are looking for. And I think that this, a new PvP game mode, I think has some potential. I'm really glad they're looking at it because, again, it's not a priority for Arena. It hasn't been for a while. I think it's really cool that they're willing to actually put in the effort to try to regrow it a little bit. I imagine their goal will be that it's kind of the introductory PvP game mode, and then Conquest will still be the competitive mode. That's where you're going to see tournaments, I think. I hope they don't change that. I would understand it if they did, if this mode goes really well and they actually make it the primary and made it even put it, they put it into ranked, for example, as like the main game mode. I would be a little bit sad if that happened because I'm a bit of a Conquest enjoyer. But at the end of the day, I think, like what's happening right now isn't working and it isn't going to get better. It really isn't. Like, rewards won't fix it. Rewards aren't going to fix it. Like, balance isn't going to fix it. The only thing that's going to fix it is new players. And I think this is a solid strategy to kind of make that happen.
I really like how in the blog post they mentioned like doing a beta and seeking feedback and incorporating that feedback. I think that's really important because this is like, you gotta make a game mode that the community actually loves. Like when Strongholds came out, it was pretty much like universally like panned, right? Like people did really not want to play Strongholds.
They also never updated it.
I feel like Stronghold had potential. Like, if they were willing to really iterate on it and like spend like a year of like refining it, it could have been really good.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes me excited here because from the get-go, they sort of talk about taking feedback and iterating. Like they actually mention, I think, the word iterating in the blog post even. I think that's really, really important. You know, like be willing to like test it out, take feedback from the player base, and actually like incorporate that and like make adjustments to make something people really enjoy. I think that you're exactly right. The issue with Stronghold is just that like, you know, they just kind of dropped it into the game and then that was kind of it. And they didn't really, you know, didn't really look that much at like what people actually wanted it to be and feedback people had. And it has me excited this time. It seems like they're very much trying to avoid that. They're trying to avoid the pitfalls of the past, which is kind of the same as what they're doing with the new raids, I suppose. You know, it feels like they've learned.
Yeah, I also think it's just a really cool approach, kind of similar to what they were doing with World versus World restructuring. Because again, I think this almost goes back to what we were talking about getting it right first try. It didn't work with Stronghold. We saw them do that with Desert Borderlands as well. That also didn't really work out super well, right? Like, I think that, especially when it comes to a mode like this, the competitive mode, where, like, the players decide how to play these modes to an extent. So I think it's having actual player feedback is incredibly important. Like making sure that the idea works out with how the player base plays it, not just like kind of on the drawing board, I think is really important. So I really like the approach actually that they're taking here. I think it's cool. You know, I think that the community really appreciates it. They really appreciated the Worlds restructuring stuff. And we're able to give a lot of feedback on that. Yeah, I hope we see the same thing with PvP. It's, yeah, very cool, actually. Very cool. Didn't see that one coming. I'm very surprised. I'm much more surprised that they're actually doing this than Wing 8, to be honest.
It's shocking.
Yeah.
It'd be great if it was Polymock.
Oh, yeah? Polymock,
like, yeah, and it was like just, you know, super easy PvP because it's Poke Battles, essentially.
Yeah. Not sure about that one.
Polymock's coming. I guarantee you.
Oh, yeah?
Expansion
But you think they're going to... I mean, well, I guess so. Yeah, I don't see why not.
Not as many people want it anymore. It used to be like such a thing, right? Like on the subreddit, everyone's like, when is Polymock? When is Polymock?
That's because Guild Wars 1 people are all in retirement homes now and they don't remember it.
Yeah, now I mentioned Polymock on my stream and everybody's like, what is Polymock? I've never heard of this. What does this even mean?
I've never heard of it. I feel very left out in this conversation because
It was essentially in Guild Wars 1, it was like a Pokemon minigame where you collected pieces and then you'd fight your pieces against other NPCs. But you could easily just do it where it's not, you know, against NPCs. Although you could have also NPCs.
Yeah. And there you have it. I guess we've done the entire JANTHIR expansion announcement and Spear Necromancer thing as well with all the other spears. I guess that's about it. What a juicy tea time. Love to see that. Very nice. I think that's going to about wrap things up for us today, though, gamers. Hope you all enjoyed the show. Thank you to my wonderful guests, of course. I'm going to be going through all of those gamers now. See if it... Wait, no, I pressed the wrong one. Hang on. This one. Look at them all. Look at all the hosts. Look, it worked. Incredible. It did the link. Look at those links. You could click them. You could do it right now. We've got the bear here as well. Be sure to subscribe to Lara for YouTube short gaming with the variety of meme clips, bear-themed meme clips coming soon. But anyway, let's go through all this. If anyone has any final thoughts, this is the time. And also, tell us a little bit about yourself. While you're doing that, while you're expressing yourself, be sure to sell out as much as possible. Just don't mention your referral link. Only I'm allowed to do that. Right, first up, let's go back on bright and early. Got up just for the show. That's how much Emmy is hyped for JANTHIR Wilds. What's going on?
Yeah, so hi, my name is Emmy. I woke up at 7 a.m. this morning to get ready for this tea time. I don't even wake up this early for work. Yeah, I do a lot of endgame PV shenanigans, so raids, strike missions, fractals, all that kind of stuff. I like to think of myself as a hardcore player. I really like, you know, tackling the super, super high tier content and then also leading progression groups through it. So something exciting I'm going to be doing is I'm putting together my 5th progression group completely from scratch with 9 other completely like base player, like they've never done HCCM before, and we're going to be tackling that encounter starting next week actually. And then I also have plans to put together a Temple of Febe or Ceres CM group as well. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, that's what I do. But Yeah.
There you have it. And next up, Arborstone fan, bear enjoyer, Epoch
We didn't
CM.
even talk about bears. We didn't even talk about the bears.
I mean, code and well, I mean, you can do that now. You can use this time to do
really
this, Lara.
Cute. I really like them. Hey everyone, my name's Serenity. I make bear memes on YouTube Shorts now. I used to do streams and other stuff too, but now it's just bear memes, really. You can find me on YouTube and on Twitch. I just want to point out that my bear, I gave him a name yesterday. I got him as a gift literally yesterday. His name is Referral Link. I don't know. Like what
is this?
There's nothing else. I'm trying. That just happens to be his name.
That's interesting.
Yeah, go check out my content if you want to.
Okay. And of course, finally, in the top right, we have Guild Wars 2 Zojia lore expert, erotic roleplay connoisseur, investigator, Nike.
Investigator, yeah. Connoisseur would imply that like I have like taste and preferences, which I do not. But yeah, you can check out my YouTube channel. There's a lot of Guild Wars 2 content on there. Like my Twitch is mostly other things than Guild Wars 2 these days. But if you're a hate watcher, if you're angered by my YouTube videos, as most people are, and you're a hate watcher, feel free to inflate my Twitch numbers by hate watching me on there, if that's your thing. Because, you know, hate watchers always welcome. It's pretty much, I've cultivated a following of people in the community that hate watch, and that's great. And they reply to every Reddit post I make, with hateful comments. So keep hating.
Anyway, guys, you should definitely follow everyone here for our insane content and good refined takes. Look at all the links. There you go. And you can follow this stream as well. TeaTime is probably back for the foreseeable future. Okay, next time we discuss how amusing it is that the World of Warcraft expansion is coming out 6 days after Guild Wars 2 JANTHIR Wilds. That's a mighty coincidence there. Love to see that. But also a variety of other topics, all the news for Guild Wars 2 over time. It's going to be great. It's going to be exciting. Be sure to follow the stream. Be sure to subscribe. Hand over your money. Use the referral links. Okay, honestly, look, just buy an account for every net partner. Go through the list. Get yourself an alt for all of them. You know you want to. Follow on Twitch. Follow all the social media. Subscribe on YouTube. Join the channel. Throw money at the screen. That's it. Hope you enjoyed the show, gamers. Thank you to my wonderful host for joining us. It was a fantastic show, as always. And we'll see you next time. Take it easy, gamers. We're out of here.